Chapter 2494. The sixth level of the Emperor Realm was called the Void Connecting Realm. It was also called the Lawless Realm. At this stage, the practitioner's natal imperial realm would form its own source of power, and it would no longer be restrained by the power of heaven and earth. As long as the practitioner's natal imperial realm was not destroyed, he would be able to refine all kinds of power between heaven and earth into pure cultivation, so that his own power would be endless. In the past, when a practitioner cultivated, he needed to rely on the blessed abode, to comprehend the phenomena of heaven and earth, and to use the power of mountains and rivers. On the starry ancient path, he could summon the wind and rain, move mountains and fill seas. But if he left the starry ancient path and entered a strange universe, it was very likely that his cultivation would be suppressed, and he could only rely on his own power to support himself. Just like the mortal world, the ancient desolation realm, and the starry ancient path, different worlds and planes covered different laws of heaven and earth. But whether it was the mortal world or the ancient desolation realm, they all belonged to the starry ancient path, so the laws of heaven and earth covered by them were not much different. But once he left the starry ancient path and entered a new universe, it meant that he would have to face new laws of heaven and earth and the power of order. The cultivation that an outsider originally controlled was very likely to be suppressed or even rejected. This was also one of the reasons why practitioners below the Emperor Realm rarely had the chance to go to a foreign world. Because only people in the Emperor Realm could travel between different universes and different laws of heaven and earth. But similarly, people in the Emperor Realm might be able to cross different universes, but they would also be rejected by the strange laws of heaven and earth, making it difficult for them to use those strange laws of heaven and earth. For example, if it wasn't for Lin Sun's sufficiently formidable cultivation, then merely the Grand Tao laws that covered the various universes and worlds would be able to cause him to feel extremely pressured. But as long as he reached the sixth level of the Emperor Realm, it would be completely different. The so-called lawless meant that no matter which universe, no matter what laws of heaven and earth he faced, he could ignore them. The core was the transformation of the natal imperial realm. The void-reaching Emperor Realm could be lawless and refine all kinds of power for his own use. Even if it was a strange world and strange laws of heaven and earth, he could still use them. Now, Lin Sun was about to face a great tribulation to enter the void-reaching realm. On the barren star, Lin Sun sat cross-legged with a dull look, like an old well without any ripples. His cultivation was restrained to the extreme and contained in the Life Emperor Realm. On the other hand, the natal Emperor stage was like a volcano that had been accumulating for many years and was about to erupt, producing thunderous roars. The entire huge celestial body resonated with it. This was the depths of a collapsed universe. The Grand Tao had dried up, and disasters occurred frequently. However, it was also for this reason that Lin Sun chose to undergo the heavenly tribulation here. First, there was no power of the Great Way. Second, this place was desolate and uninhabited, so he was not afraid of being disturbed. 3 days later, Lin Sun's body was covered with dust, and there was no sign of life, just like the nearby rocks and dust. Lin Sun was as dead as a tree. However, the huge celestial body beneath him was constantly resonating and moving rhythmically, as if it was inhaling and exhaling. The natal monarch realm in his body seemed to be on fire, showing signs of boiling and gushing. Silently, rolling black clouds emerged from the depths of the sky. The breath of disaster, like a torrent, instantly covered the sky above Lin Sun's head. It was as dark as the eternal night. The oppressive and terrible breath of disaster could make ordinary people in the Emperor Realm desperate and collapse. It was too powerful, and this scene lasted for a whole day. The huge celestial body was completely shrouded by thick black clouds, which were dark and exuded a majestic and boundless breath of destruction. In the dead silence, there was a sudden loud noise. It was like the first thunder in the creation of the world. This collapsed and withered starry sky suddenly trembled. Countless barren stars rumbled and exploded, turning into powder. Crack! The huge celestial body under Lin Sun also cracked. Unable to bear the loud noise, it suddenly burst into pieces. At this time, Lin Sun, who had been silent and motionless, quietly opened his eyes and stood up. With this movement, the natal Emperor realm, which had been compressed to the extreme and boiled to the extreme, erupted completely like a volcano. Boom! A strand of a terrifying and boundlessly imposing aura of the Grand Tao spread out from Lin Sun's body, and it faintly seemed like an enormous abyss had appeared within it. A cauldron had surged out from within the abyss, and the surroundings of the cauldron had instead developed into a brilliant and boundless universe. The sun, moon, stars, the landscape, all of them had transformed into phenomena that fluttered about. Later, a chaos tree rose from the ground and released chaos. Suddenly, all the strange phenomena were covered in it. It was chaotic and indescribable. Lin Sun was still Lin Sun, but the power he released at this moment was so strong that it tore the thick black clouds above his head. Rumble in the depths of the clouds, thunder and lightning flowed and danced wildly, as if they were enraged. Endless thunderbolts poured down like the Milky Way. The power released by each thunderbolt was unimaginably terrible. A single wisp of it was enough to kill people in the Emperor realm in the world. At this time, it was like the Milky Way had burst its dike and poured down. That scene could even make the ancestors of the Emperor realm tremble with fear. There was no doubt that this was an unprecedented catastrophe. Lin Sun, who was below it, didn't dodge. Instead, he rushed up and opened his arms. His tall figure was like a big abyss, releasing unparalleled devouring and obliterating power. In an instant, his whole body was submerged by the endless torrent of thunder and lightning. The bright lightning was dense, and the earth-shattering thunder rumbled. All of a sudden, there was a scene like the end of the world. But just after a moment, the rolling torrent of thunder and lightning was constantly swallowed and obliterated as if it was swept by a huge whirlpool. Later, the thunder and lightning disappeared between heaven and earth. Only Lin Sun's abyss-like figure was left standing there, releasing infinite light. Looking carefully, the remaining thunder and lightning were still flowing through the pores of his body, but he was unscathed and his momentum was even stronger. "It's just an appetizer. Come again." Lin Sun raised his eyes and looked into the depths of the sky. There was a faint fighting spirit burning in the depths of his eyes. Boom! As if it was completely enraged, the tribulation cloud rolled, showing all kinds of scenes of the end of the world. Then, the thunder and lightning evolved into the phantoms of gods and demons. There were thousands of them, roaring and rushing to Lin Sun. It was like an army of gods and demons on an expedition. Lin Sun smiled indifferently and rushed up, displaying his own Tao and law. Every move of his released the power to destroy the world. The army of gods and demons was defeated in pieces, turned into a rain of thunder and lightning, and then was swallowed up by Lin Sun's figure. He was like a hot knife through butter, galloping and killing, sweeping away all obstacles. Before the army of gods and demons was killed, all kinds of strange scenes rushed out from the depths of the tribulation cloud. There was the purgatory world stained with black blood, condensing and covering down. There was a bright and shining Milky Way, gathering billions of stars. There were ancient altars, mysterious pagodas, strange Taoist rites, magnificent divine palaces, towering Taoist mountains, one after another. Those scenes were simply unbelievable. This was the power that a great trial of the Emperor's path could display. Even Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. Then he laughed and jumped up. He completely released himself and exerted all of his strength. He didn't think of anything in his mind, and he didn't have any thoughts at all. There was only battle intent burning in his heart, and it gushed out wantonly. Rumble! This starry sky was completely covered by the endless breath of destruction and tribulation. all kinds of thunder and lightning phenomena appeared frequently, shocking the world. It didn't take long for Lin Sun's figure to be heavily injured. He was crushed, bombarded, torn, or whipped, but he still kept on fighting, as if he didn't know pain and life and death. His majestic and powerful figure had never been defeated. After a long time, only then did the tribulation lightning gradually dissipate. In the field, only Lin Sun's broken figure was left. But his spirit was still boiling, his unparalleled fighting spirit was still strong, and his will was unshakable. This catastrophe was far more terrifying than he had imagined. It had even exceeded his imagination. But at this moment, Lin Sun had no way back. He never thought of retreating. In his lifetime, since he'd risen to prominence at a young age until now, he'd experienced countless heavenly tribulations. Every single one of them was simply like he was fighting with his life on the line between life and death, and it was dangerous to the extreme and terrifying to the extreme. It was far from something an ordinary cultivator could understand. But he never flinched once. Naturally, this time was no exception. Similarly, no one knew better than Lin Sun that after experiencing those strange and even abnormal tribulations, the benefits were beyond imagination. Without giving Lin Sun too much time to breathe, another tribulation thunder was formed. Boom! Majestic figures of thunder and lightning, like ancient kings patrolling the world, rushed out from the depths of the tribulation thunder. Each of them glowed with power that was not weaker than Lin Sun at all, just like a group of peerless emperors. The most incredible thing was that these figures were men and women with different appearances. Some wore Taoist robes, rode cyan kylin, and held jade rulers. Some held golden halberds, wore imperial crowns, and wore blood-stained armors. Some figures were slender, with a hazy light rain, and looked like immortals, holding a jade bottle. Some were as fierce as demons, manipulating wind, fire, thunder, and lightning, and stepping on the blood purgatory sea. Every single one of them had an infinite amount of power. Lin Sun's pupils shrank, and a thought came to his mind. Is it possible that this tribulation evolved from the emperors who had shone brilliantly on the path of extinction in ancient and modern times? It was the first time that Lin Sun had encountered such a tribulation, which was extremely strange and terrible. Before Lin Sun could think more, boom! Those terrible figures had already stepped on the void and rushed towards Lin Sun, and suddenly Lin Sun was besieged. Although these figures were not the real peerless emperors, their power was not inferior to Lin Sun's. The power of Taoism and treasures they displayed was extremely powerful, which was the real power of the peerless emperors. P.S. The second update will be a little late. Today is her birthday, so I'll have dinner with her. Chapter 2495. The battle broke out in the void. A group of peerless figures besieged Lin Sun. The power they released shattered the sky and destroyed everything. It was unimaginably horrible. Lin Sun, who was seriously injured, was in great danger at this moment. He was so oppressed that he almost couldn't lift his head. There had never been a tribulation as difficult and terrible as this one. It was completely beyond Lin Sun's expectation. But he didn't have the time to think about all of this. The essence, energy, and spirit in his entire body blazed to the extreme, and the will that he'd tempered through many years of slaughter allowed him to maintain a wisp of calmness and emptiness in his mind even when he was in deep trouble. Gradually, he acutely noticed that even though every single one of his opponents possessed supreme strength and were peerlessly formidable, they lacked intelligence and intelligence. This caused their attacks to lack variation and agility. This was a flaw. However, these opponents were too powerful, so it was extremely difficult to catch and attack them. After a long time, Lin Sun's situation became more and more unbearable. His body was broken and cracked, and his bones were broken. He looked extremely miserable. He was gasping for breath, but his eyes were burning with flames. After all, it's just a thunder punishment, not a living emperor of Juing. I should try my best to suppress him in mind, cultivation, willpower, and strength. Suddenly, Lin Sun let out a roar. His mind was like a god, and his willpower was like iron. He exhausted all his cultivation and attacked with all his strength. Kill, kill, kill. He didn't care about life or death, nor was he afraid of being injured. There was only a pure and disdainful fighting intent left in his body. Boom! After a while, a man with a golden halberd, a crown, and a blood-stained armor was punched by Lin Sun and turned into a rain of thunder and lightning. As Lin Sun's figure swallowed the rain of thunder and lightning, a wonderful feeling came to his mind. Nie Longxiang, the first emperor of Juing in the Feihuang star area, is called Dragon Elephant Emperor. This information was extremely vague. It was just a description, but it was impossible to know the details. So Lin Sun didn't know which plane of the flying locust star area was in the vast thousand world and how great Nie Longxiang was. But this experience reminded Lin of his experience in the samsara world of nirvana and the ranking of each realm since ancient times. On the other hand, the scene before his eyes seemed to be a competition between Zhu Ying's imperial realm cultivators for rankings. But Lin Sun was not sure whether it was true or not. Moreover, he didn't have much time to think. The battle was still going on. However, after defeating an opponent and devouring the scattered thunder and light rain, Lin Sun's strength seemed to have undergone a wonderful transformation, making his seriously injured figure show a new kind of power. This change refreshed Lin Sun. Kill. His fighting spirit was burning, and he fought while bathed in blood. Not long after, an old man in a Taoist robe, riding a green kailan and holding a jade ruler was killed by Lin Sun. Before the light rain fell, he was swallowed up by Lin Sun. Immediately after, that wondrous feeling appeared again. Feng Xingzi, the #1 martial emperor in the Wenzhen Xing domain. His title is Martial Emperor Wu Heng, and he has dominated the universe for 90,000 years. At the same time, Lin Sun's strength changed again. Sure enough, defeating the opponent is equivalent to killing the thunder retribution. I can obtain the power of nirvana from the thunder retribution and transform my own cultivation. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep and bright. When he looked at the opponents in the field again, it was as if he was staring at delicious prey. Kill. Without hesitation, he rushed out again. What a horrible chi of disaster! Who is crossing the thunder retribution here? A mighty and bright golden figure suddenly floated up into appearance nearby this collapsed and desolate universe, and it emanated a terrifying glow and flowed with divine radiance. Looking carefully, it was Emperor Golden Flame, the supreme elder of all Spirits Mountain in the White Crow Star area. At this moment, his pupils shrank and he was moved. In the senses of his divine sense, there were layers upon layers of tribulation clouds in the depths of the collapsed universe, and it was like an eternal night that blotted out the sky and blotted out the sun. Merely the aura of destruction they emanated caused a martial ancestor realm figure like him to shudder with fear. Emperor Golden Flame immediately stopped and didn't dare to get close for fear of being contaminated by the aura of disaster. It turns out to be the Zhu Ying Emperor's tribulation to the 6th level of the Emperor realm. After a while, Emperor Golden Flame revealed a look of understanding. In the White Crow Star area, there were also Zhu Schwampers, and in the All Spirits Mountain, there was such a legendary figure. He was Emperor Qing Sun, the junior brother of Emperor Golden Flame. He was a peerless genius when he was young and had reached the 7th level of Zhu Shui Emperor realm in less than 30,000 years of cultivation. As early as thousands of years ago, Emperor Qing Sun had set off for the boundless thousand battlefield. As the senior brother, Emperor Golden Flame naturally knew the details of the peerless Emperor realm. He knew that when such an existence broke through the realm, the tribulation they faced was incomparably terrifying. No, when junior brother Qing Sun was crossing the thunder retribution, it wasn't so terrifying, Soon, Emperor Golden Flame's face changed slightly and revealed a look of disbelief. When Emperor Qing Sun was crossing the sixth tribulation, Emperor Golden Flame had personally protected him. How could he not know the mystery of this tribulation? But at this moment, Emperor Golden Flame was shocked to find that the great tribulation in the depths of the universe was not only more powerful than Emperor Qing Sun's tribulation, but it also produced many incredible changes. Emperor Golden Flame had never seen all of this before. Who is this person? Why is he facing such an unimaginable great tribulation? All of a sudden, Emperor Golden Flame's curiosity was aroused. He, who had originally intended to hurry on with his journey, decided to stay and take a look. Time flew by. Unknowingly, several hours had passed. Gradually, the Golden Flamed Arch Ancestor sensed that the black tribulation clouds that blotted out the sky were showing signs of dissipating. This allowed him to vaguely sense the figure undergoing the tribulation. However, the figure was too far away, and the figure was too dazzling and bathed in lightning, so he couldn't see the figure's appearance clearly. Extraordinary! He was even able to overcome such a great calamity. This person's attainments in the ultimate path towards the Tao is absolutely not inferior to junior brother Qing Sun, and he can be considered as a true peak overlord in a starry sky. Emperor Golden Flame exclaimed inwardly. But in the next moment, he was stunned and his eyeballs almost fell out of their socket. How could it be him? Emperor Golden Flame almost cried out. Far away in the depths of the universe, the rolling tribulation clouds had already dissipated, allowing him to see the appearance of the person undergoing the tribulation. It was the murderer who had killed 6 Emperor Realm experts of the All Spirits God Mountain half a year ago. Half a year ago, he had trekked all the way to find Lin Sun's traces. However, the star path was vast, and he was only sure that Lin Sun was heading to the vast thousand-battle domain. Who would have thought that he would actually see him here? Thinking of how he had been amazed and even thought of befriending Huang Xiaolong, Golden Flame Martial Ancestor's face darkened as if he had swallowed a fly. It's a pity. A person like you could have shone brilliantly in the future, but since you've offended my All-Spirits God Mountain, today you're destined to die. Boiling killing intent surged in Emperor Golden Flame's heart. He took a deep breath and with a cold look in his eyes, he took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. Who, seeing the tribulation clouds gradually dissipate, Lin Sun let out a long breath of turbid air. Earlier, he'd crushed the figures of all the peak emperors and devoured the energy of the tribulation lightning, allowing his cultivation to undergo rebirth over and over again. At this moment, he'd already smoothly stepped into the realm of lawlessness. The natal emperor realm in his body was like an eternally burning sun, constantly spewing out abundant energy. At this stage, as long as the natal emperor realm was not destroyed, it would possess the power to refine everything. It could ignore the rules of the great Tao of heaven and earth and be lawless. Lin Sun could feel that his strength had completely changed after reaching this stage. It had undergone a qualitative change. The 9 stages of the Emperor Realm were like a natural chasm. The first 3 stages were known as the Emperor's Heart Barrier. After breaking through this barrier, one's body and mind could become a world. From the 4th to the 6th stage of the Emperor Realm, there was a barrier called the Confinement Barrier. To break through the confinement, there was no law and no heaven. It could be said that the 4th and 5th stage of the Emperor Realm were a kind of accumulation. At the 6th stage of the Emperor Realm, there would be a new great transformation. At this moment, Lin Sun had broken through the confinement barrier and entered the 6th stage of the Emperor Realm. At this moment, his cultivation also underwent an unprecedented change. However, before Lin Sun could feel the subtle mystery of this new change, a sense of danger welled up in his heart. Almost instinctively, his figure flashed. Boom! The void where he had been standing was shattered by a gigantic golden hand. Lin Sun's black eyes suddenly turned cold. At the same time, a surprised voice came from afar. just a sixth stage of the Emperor realm. Even though you're a peerless great Emperor, you're not bad to be able to dodge my attack." Then, the figure of the Golden Flame Emperor Ancestor appeared. His expression was cold and his eyes were fixed on Lin Sun. "Unfortunately, you're destined to die today, Emperor Ancestor." At this moment, Lin Sun's body stiffened and his pupils contracted. He had never thought that such a terrifying existence would suddenly appear out of nowhere. Boom! Before Lin Sun could think about it, the Golden Flame Emperor Ancestor attacked without hesitation. His body released a monstrous golden light that covered the sky and shrouded all directions. He waved his sleeves, pinched his palms and fingers, and slapped hard. The palm print showed a kind of supreme ancestor realm law. It was mysterious and unpredictable. Looking from afar, it was like the hand of God shrouding down to destroy the world and wipe out all living beings. The power of the Golden Flame Emperor Ancestor was vividly reflected at this moment. At this moment, Lin Sun did not hesitate to use his strongest means. The abyssal sword cauldron roared out. The forbidden passage released the light of time. His cultivation was pushed to the extreme at this moment. The figure of the Golden Flame Emperor Ancestor stagnated for a moment. Then, his body was enveloped by the abyssal sword cauldron. With a roar, his body and spirit exploded. Before they could spread, they were obliterated. In an instant, the Golden Flame Emperor Ancestor was killed. Straightforward and efficient, incomparably domineering. The Golden Flame Emperor Ancestor, who was immeasurably powerful and cold, did not even have time to react before he died. Such a way of death was undoubtedly too humiliating. If it was spread out, no one would dare to believe it. After all, the Golden Flame Emperor Ancestor was supreme and terrifying. He was absolutely a character above the heavens. But now, he was killed before he could react, which would absolutely make all practitioners dumbfounded. Even Lin Sun himself could not help but be stunned. He patted his forehead and said with regret, "How could I forget that I have just broken through the realm? I should have left this old guy here to test the power of the 6th level of the Emperor realm." If the dead Emperor Ancestor Golden Flame heard these words, who knew what he would think? Literature Library. Chapter 2496. After the death of the Golden Flame Ancestor, only a pale golden ring was left. If Lin Sun hadn't stopped in time, the golden ring would have been destroyed by the abyssal sword cauldron. Lin Sun erased the imprint of will on the ring and probed it with his consciousness. He found that the ring was an emperor treasure with wisps of the power of order, which could evolve into a Taoist sword. It was called the Gung Golden Sword Ring. However, the power of order was far inferior to the Order Phoenix Flame. There were a lot of good things in the ring, including mountains of elixirs, Taoist gems, magic materials, and some miscellaneous items. Through investigation, Lin Sun learned the identity of Golden Flame Ancestor and understood why he came to kill him. When Lin Sun was about to put away the Gung Golden Sword Ring, he suddenly noticed that the surface of a purple copper mirror engraved with strange Taoist patterns was shining quietly. Lin Sun immediately took it out. Buzz, the purple copper mirror trembled slightly, and then a dazzling purple rainbow gushed out, gradually turning into a light curtain. In the light curtain, there was a vast and bloody battlefield, with mountains of corpses and seas of blood everywhere. Smoke billowed, piercing the sky and the earth, and the roar of demons rumbled. Many stalwart figures were running amok, chasing and killing each other. The sky and earth were turned upside down, and the sun and moon were dim. There was a terrible scene of collapse everywhere. "Senior brother." Suddenly, a voice sounded. Then, a handsome face appeared on the light curtain, with long cyan hair and a vision of thousands of swords bursting out in his pupils. However, when he saw Lin Sun through the light curtain of the copper mirror, the handsome man was stunned and his face darkened. "Who are you?" He spoke with an icy cold voice that was sonorous like a sword and terrifying to the extreme. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly. He had noticed that the purple copper mirror was a strange ancient communication treasure, which could produce the magical effect of world's end near at hand. The golden sword ring is also in your hands, could it be? The eyes of the green-haired man burst out a terrible chill, as if he had guessed something. Lin Sun said indifferently, "You're right, Golden Flame is dead." The green-haired man pointed at Lin Sun with a frosty face. "Don't let me see you in the Kiliacosm battle domain." His voice was full of unparalleled killing intent. Boom! The screen of light shattered, and everything disappeared. Emperor Qing Sun. Lin Sun thought. When checking the relics in the Gungjin sword ring, Lin Sun saw some letters, which recorded some things between Golden Flame Ancestor and Emperor Qing Sun. This allowed Lin Sun to understand the identity of Great Emperor Qing Sun, and he knew that this was a peerless supreme great emperor who had attained the 7th level of the Emperor realm. Rather than saying that Qing Sun was Jin Yan's junior brother, it would be better to say that Jin Yan was more like Qing Sun's senior. He had watched Qing Sun's rise and growth, so they had a close relationship. The place where that guy appeared was filled with battles and smoke. It should be one of the battlefields in the Great Thousand Battle Domains. As Lin Sun pondered, he crushed the purple copper mirror in his hand. Next, Lin Sun sat cross-legged and began to consolidate his cultivation. As he cultivated, he keenly sensed that it was not just his life Emperor realm that had undergone a qualitative change. Even the sapling of the chaos tree that had taken root in it had grown taller. The tender green leaves on the branches swayed and flowed with a rhythm of life. The chaotic laws it gave off also became purer. For example, there were 18 leaves on the branches now. The veins on each leaf were actually a manifestation of the primal chaos laws. When Lin Sun was practicing, he could intuitively feel that there was a kind of chaotic quality in his cultivation, which made the power of more than 5,000 great ways he controlled be nourished. If the Tao were different colored canvases, then the chaotic laws were a type of dye that could make the different canvases brighter and more beautiful. For the time being, Lin Sun was still unable to comprehend the profundity of these subtle changes. However, he dared to conclude that as the chaos tree continued to grow, more and more leaves would appear, and the chaotic laws that emerged were bound to become stronger. All of this directly formed a form of feedback and nurturing towards his own cultivation, and it caused his cultivation to undergo a transformation. 7 days later, Lin Sun got up from his meditation and felt comfortable all over. With every breath he took, all kinds of aura and energy in the world could be refined into the energy he needed. This was the realm of lawlessness. Even in this collapsed and desolate universe, he could still absorb energy and refine it for his own use. On that day, Lin Sun continued his journey. He traveled through the starry sky and followed the direction that Cyan Sparrow had pointed him towards the vast thousand-battle domain. The journey was full of hardships and hardship. There was no need to elaborate on the dangers and killing tribulations. Almost every time he entered a collapsed universe, he would definitely encounter all kinds of unexpected natural disasters. Those disasters could even easily eliminate existences in the Emperor realm. And when he walked through some prosperous universes, there were also all kinds of dangers. Just like the experience in the White Crow star field, the foreign powerhouses saw an outsider like Lin Sun as prey and wantonly attacked him. And the killing tribulations that targeted Lin Sun were usually formed by existences in the Emperor realm. Lin Sun naturally wouldn't be polite and killed his way through. Time flew and another 3 months passed. Lin Sun calculated that he had killed no less than 100 existences in the Emperor realm along the way. Among them, there were even several figures in the Ancestor realm at the 9th level of the Emperor realm. But like Emperor Ancestor Golden Flame, these Emperor Ancestors couldn't be said to be the real ancestor of a Tao, because they didn't really control the complete Tao of a Tao. For the current Lin Sun, He didn't even need to use the forbidden death magic to kill these opponents. He could just rely on his own cultivation to kill them in a head-on battle. And this tempering also made Lin Sun's temperament become more and more calm, like an unshakable ancient mountain. On this day, we're about to enter the Guide City, where one of the 8 realm gates is located, Cyan Sparrow suddenly said in high spirits. Since time immemorial, an enormous city that was established in the starry sky of the universe stood towering near every dimension gate that led to the Great Xian battle region. When powerhouses from different universes and starry worlds went to the realm gate, they had to gather in this giant city and wait for the Guide City. Therefore, it was called the Guide City. Cyan Sparrow had already told Lin Sun about this on the way. At this moment, she was also refreshed and said, "We're finally here." After careful calculation, almost a year had passed since he started trekking on the ancient path of the starry sky. In this year, he had experienced dozens of collapsed and desolate universes of various sizes, and he had also passed through many prosperous worlds of the star region. The dangers and tempering he had experienced were far beyond his imagination. The most terrifying thing was the loneliness, solitude, and the unknown. The vast starry sky was boundless, and every step he took made him feel lost. Fortunately, Cyan Sparrow accompanied him and guided him. Otherwise, if Lin Sun had explored by himself, it would have been impossible for him to arrive in such a short period of time. The Guide City you're heading to is located outside the Earth Gate, one of the 8 realm gates. The Heaven Capital Star region, which is ranked 5th in the boundless world, is not far from this Guide City. Remember, once you enter the Guide City, don't attack without permission. Otherwise, the City Guardian in the Guide City will summon all the powerhouses in the city to kill you. Cyan Sparrow quickly gave advice. Based on what she said, the position of City Guardian was very special. It was held by the powerhouses of the Eternal World's immortal Emperor clans. For example, the Guide City Guardian outside the Earth Gate was guarded by the power of 4 immortal Emperor clans. Every 3,000 years, a new batch of City Guardian would be changed. These 4 immortal Emperor clans were Wen, Heng, Peng, and He. They were all immortal Emperor clans that controlled Earth-ranked order power. In the Eternal World, they were first-rate existences. Hearing this, Lin Sun could not help but ask, how is it compared to the Luo clan? Since ancient times, the 8 guide cities outside the 8 realm gates have been the 8 paths from the boundless world to the boundless thousand battles domain. They have always been controlled by the immortal Emperor clans in the Eternal World, Cyan Sparrow said. In the past, when the Luo clan was at its peak, they once firmly controlled an Guide City with the power of their clan, and the other immortal Emperor clans could not touch it. But now the Luo clan is no longer the same as before. Now, they can only control the Guide City outside the fiery world gate with the other immortal Emperor clans. Compared to the Wen, Heng, Peng, and He forces, the Luo clan cannot be said to be at the top, but they are not far off either. Lin Sun nodded. The 8 realm gates and the 8 guide cities had always been controlled by the immortal Emperor clans in the Eternal World. This was indeed out of Lin Sun's expectations. 2 days later, under Cyan Sparrow's guidance, Lin Sun finally arrived at the Guide City where the Gate of Earth and Kuan was located. It was a cold and empty universe. A black belt of light that looked like a galaxy stretched across the galaxy and enveloped the surroundings. It was like a screen in the sky. The Tao Taboo, sky screen. It was a natural forbidden zone in the universe. Even existences at the Imperial Emperor realm would have a slim chance of survival if they tried to traverse such a restricted area. Because the heaven restriction screen was filled with a strange and ominous energy of tribulation, and it was capable of erasing the cultivator's cultivation and corroding their soul and body. Aside from that, there were also many inconceivable dangers and taboos. Even immortal Emperor realm existences did not dare to cross it. According to Cyan Sparrow, Only those who had surpassed the immortal Emperor realm and reached the immortal realm had the ability to cross the Tao taboo. Sky screen. And the Gate of Earth and Kuan, one of the 8 realm gates, was located in the deepest part of the Tao taboo. Sky screen. Fortunately, in the guide city, there was a way to avoid the dangers of the Tao taboo. Sky screen and reach the Gate of Earth and Kuan. Look over there. That's the guide city. It's made of immortal divine metal. Even immortal Emperor realm existences are unable to shake it. It can be said to have existed for eternity. Over the course of countless years, countless immortal Emperor realm existences experienced hardships and trekked over to gather in this city. Cyan Sparrow looked into the distance. In the starry sky not far away from the Tao taboo, sky screen stood a city that was bathed in mysterious Tao light. It was grand and majestic. P.S. Something went wrong with my thoughts. Caven is very tired. The second watch will be very late. Chapter 2497. In the cold and silent universe, a magnificent city sat there. It was majestic, and the surging light of the Tao rose and fell like a myriad of tides. At first glance, Lin Sun couldn't help but be moved. The huge city wasn't situated on a star, nor was it erected in a plane of existence. It hung directly in the universe, and it was shocking. The sun, moon, and stars seemed extremely tiny in front of this city. The city of Guide. The green sparrow transformed into a ray of light and returned to the pouch. She said, "If the Eternal Emperor clan sees me, they'll definitely bring disaster to you." Lin Sun nodded and flew towards the city of Guide. The closer he got, the more he realized how huge the city of Guide was. It was simply more magnificent than a world. The city walls were like a boundless mountain range, and they emitted a faint golden light of the Tao. The city tower was like a natural moat, majestic and heavy. Countless dazzling lights whistled through the starry sky nearby, and they headed towards the city of Guide from all directions. The divine rainbows were like rain, and the figures were like tides. Some rode mystical beasts, some rode magnificent carriages, some stood on auspicious cloud cushions, some controlled flying treasures. Whether it was the beasts, the magnificent carriages, the cushions, or the treasures, they could all be considered the best in the world. Upon closer inspection, most of these figures moved in groups, and there were also lone travelers like Lin Sun. Lin Sun glanced around, and there were figures of Emperor Realm figures everywhere. They whistled through the heavens and the earth, and they chased after the stars and the moon with vast divine might and boundless magic power. Lin Sun couldn't help but inwardly gasp. On the ancient path of the stars, the movement of emperors would definitely cause a stir in the world, but outside of the city of Guide, it was a common occurrence. That's the city of Guide. Every once in a while, almighty figures from different universes will gather and head towards the door of Earth and Earth. However, we're only here to travel and see the scenery here so that we can prepare for the future. Since ancient times, it's only in the city of Guide that so many Emperor Realm figures can be seen. This can be considered a great spectacle in the world. It's obvious just by thinking about it. The boundless world consists of countless universes and planes, and even though the Emperor Realm figures in every single universe are extremely scarce, if all of them were to converge near Receiving City, then the amount would be extremely magnificent. That's right. In the past, there were seniors who said that there were as many Emperor Realm experts as there were hairs on a cow in the Receiving City. I didn't believe it, but now it seems that the ancients were not deceiving me. The group of emperors chatted as they flew past Lin Sun. Lin Sun was stunned when he heard their conversation. Obviously, these emperors were not going to the vast thousand battle domain. They were purely here to travel. To you cultivators of the starry sky ancient path, the path to the grand thousand battles domain is long, dangerous, and filled with ups and downs. But to some of the cultivators in the universes that are close to Interstellar City, coming here is like taking a scenic tour. Of course, the prerequisite is that they have to be at least at the Emperor Realm. Cyan Sparrow transmitted her voice to Lin Sun, giving him guidance. Just like Tiandu Star Area, which is the closest to Interstellar City, it is ranked 5th in the boundless world. The Emperor Realm figures who rise from it can reach Interstellar City in less than 3 days. Lin Sun nodded and followed the figures towards Interstellar City. He was alone, his breath was restrained, and his temperament was indifferent. He looked no different from an ordinary person. But the Emperor Realm figures he met along the way did not dare to look down on him. After all, those who could travel around the void and head to Interstellar City were at least Emperor Realm figures like them. After entering the towering city gate, Lin soon saw the scene of people rubbing shoulders everywhere, and the light of treasures overflowed. As an interstellar city that was famous throughout the boundless world, it was unknown how many terrifying figures came here every day. Similarly, there were also many chambers of commerce and trading places here. Whether it was the elixir shop, treasure pavilion, weapon refining workshop, or places such as restaurants and inns, most of them were open for Emperor Realm figures, and they all had huge forces standing behind them. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to have a place in Interstellar City. In fact, apart from being a gateway to the boundless thousand battle domains, Interstellar City was also an extremely prosperous city of trade and commerce. Many Emperor Realm figures from different universes gathered here, not to go to the boundless thousand battle domains, but purely to exchange divine materials, elixirs, cultivation methods, and other items needed for cultivation. And since it was a trading place that could attract all the great emperors, the items traded were naturally not trivial. What surprised Lin Sun was that apart from the Emperor Realm figures, most of the people in the city were under the Emperor Realm. They played various roles, such as restaurant servants, shop attendants, and so on. That's right, how could Emperor Realm figures be selling treasures here? Lin Sun said thoughtfully. Senior, is this your first time coming to Interstellar City? Not long after, a chubby man who looked honest and simple came over. Although he was only in the Saint Realm, he did not show any fear, and his face was full of enthusiasm. Yes, Lin Sun nodded. The chubby man's eyes lit up and said, Senior, are you here to travel, or to buy treasures? Or to go to the boundless thousand battle domains? Lin Sun said, I'll travel first, and then consider whether to go to the boundless thousand battle domains. The chubby man smiled. I'm So Zhong, and I've been in this city for many years. Perhaps I can be of help, as long as you're satisfied you can pay me. Lin Sun finally understood the purpose of his visit, and asked with interest, What do you want in return? Preferably eternal void crystal. The chubby man said, and then explained that the eternal void crystal was a kind of currency from the eternal world. It was a divine material that contained a surging chaotic aura. Every eternal void crystal was cut into the size of a copper coin, and it could be used for cultivation as a form of currency. In the eternal world, the eternal void crystal was a universally recognized currency, and could be divided into 3 classes according to their quality. The first class eternal void crystal was the most precious. The third class was the worst. After listening, Lin Sun said, I don't have it with me. The chubby man smiled, Senior, you don't need to worry about it. There's a special place in the city for exchanging eternal void crystals. 10,000 doctrine gems can be exchanged for 1 third-class eternal void crystal. 100 third-class eternal void crystals can be exchanged for 1 second-class eternal void crystal. After a pause, he continued, Of course, you can also exchange your divine materials, elixirs, cultivation methods, and treasures for eternal void crystals. Lin Sun nodded, and couldn't help asking, I heard that to go to the boundless thousand battle domains, I need to exchange for a letter token in the governor's mansion, which is under the jurisdiction of the city protector. How much is it worth? The chubby man stretched out a finger, 1,000 first-class eternal void crystals, that is, 100 billion doctrine gems. Even Lin Sun narrowed his eyes when he heard the number. It was not that he couldn't afford it. As a great emperor, the wealth he had accumulated over the years was immeasurable. Even though he had left those useless treasures in heart-cleansing Peak, he had obtained an astronomical number of trophies from his enemies on the way across the starry sky. But the price was still beyond Lin Sun's imagination. What was the concept of 100 billion doctrine gems? If it was exchanged for ordinary emperor weapons, it could be piled up into a hill. He had initially thought that the journey to the great thousand-battle domain would be a bloody path of no return, and that it would be filled with unfathomable dangers. Who would have thought that a mere token to the gate of the Earth-Kuan realm would cost him so much wealth? Senior, the Earth Gate is located at the deepest part of the Tao Forbidden Sky screen. If you don't have a message token, you won't be able to board the world ship that leads to the Earth Gate. Speaking of which, even though the price is outrageous, it's definitely affordable for an emperor like Senior. The chubby man explained quickly. Well, you can follow me before I go to the boundless thousand battle domains, Lin Sun nodded. The chubby man looked happy and then whispered, Senior, let's make it clear first. I need to collect 10 third-class Eternal Void crystals a day. Lin Sun said, Well, take me to exchange for Eternal Void crystals first. The chubby man agreed readily, and led Lin Sun through a dozen streets before they entered an ancient building called the Eternal Void House. Senior, the people in the Eternal Void House and the City Lord's Mansion are the same as the City Protector Emperor Ancestor Yunyuan. They are from the Eternal World's Immortal Emperor clan, He clan. You must remember that the He clan is the last person you can offend in the city. Before entering the Eternal Void House, the chubby man reminded him telepathically. Emperor Ancestor Yunyuan. The Immortal Emperor Ancestor He clan. Lin Sun nodded. In the Eternal Void House, there were many emperors like Lin Sun who came to the City of Induction for the first time. They were all exchanging for Eternal Void crystals. Although there were many people, they were all in an orderly manner. Clearly, everyone knew that the Eternal Void House was not to be offended. Soon, Lin Sun lined up in front of a cabinet and handed over a storage bag. Inside the bag were piles of Eternal Void crystals. However, in the end, he only obtained 3 Grade 1 Eternal Void Source crystals and Doctrine crystals, 50 Grade 2 Eternal Void Source crystals, and 80 Grade 3 Eternal Void Source crystals. At this time, Lin Sun finally saw the appearance of the Eternal Void crystals. Each piece was the size of a copper coin. The third class was green, the second class was silver, and the first class was gold. Each Eternal Void crystal weighed tens of thousands of kilograms, and contained rich and pure primal chaos aura. The higher the grade, the thicker the primal chaos aura. Lin Sun sensed that the Eternal Void crystals were much more precious than the Tao crystals. Even if they were not used as currency, they were enough to satisfy the cultivation needs of emperors. This was especially true for first-class Eternal Void crystals. They could support Lin Sun, who was already at the peak of the 6th level of Emperor Realm, to cultivate for an entire day. Walking out of the Eternal Void House, Lin Sun handed the 53rd class Eternal Void crystals to the chubby man. This is the advance payment. The fatty immediately beamed with joy. To him, who only had the cultivation of the Saint Realm, this advance payment was already considered a huge fortune. After carefully putting them away, the chubby man asked, Senior, where do we go next? Sell treasures and continue exchanging for Eternal Void crystals. Lin Sun said without hesitation. He only had 3 first-class Eternal Void crystals with him. It was far from enough for 1,000, let alone exchanging for a token that led to the Earth Realm Gate. Fortunately, although he lacked Tao crystals, he did not lack divine materials and treasures. Chapter 2498. Emperors rarely carried doctrine crystals with them when they traveled. However, the value of the treasures and divine materials carried by the emperors was destined to be far greater than any number of Tao crystals. Over the past year, Lin Sun had traversed the universe and experienced many dangers. He had killed several emperor ancestors and countless other emperors who had died by his hand. The spoils of war he had obtained were naturally astonishing. Previously, he had only exchanged for doctrine crystals at the Eternal Void House. While there might be a large number, they were not worth much. Now, Lin soon planned to sell the spoils of war that he had no use for. An hour later, Lin soon entered the Four Supremes pavilions under Fatty's guidance. The so-called Four Supremes referred to the One, Hung, Pung, and He immortal emperor clans. Every 3,000 years, the four immortal emperor clans would take turns to take control of the Four Supremes pavilions. Currently, the He clan was in charge of the Four Supremes pavilions. According to Fatty, the Four Supremes pavilions was the largest trading firm in the Four Supremes pavilions. The exchange prices were also the fairest. A full 2 hours later, when Lin Sun walked out of the Four Supremes pavilions, he had 9,000 more Grade 1 Eternity Source Crystals, 3,000 more Grade 2 Eternity Source Crystals, and 3,000 more Grade 3 Eternity Source Crystals. It did not seem like much, but the amount of wealth he had was considerable. The attendants and treasure appraisers were shocked when he exchanged. According to their understanding of the transactions over the years, even an emperor ancestor would not be able to gather 9,000 Grade 1 Eternity Source Crystals even if he sold all his treasures. Fatty's mind was already in a daze. He had personally witnessed such a large transaction. There was only one thought in his mind. This senior definitely did not lack money. He was simply too rich. In reality, the treasures Lin Sun was selling were merely the spoils of war he had collected over the past year. Moreover, they were all treasures that he had no use for. Let's go. Show me around the city. Lin Sun instructed casually. Fatty hurriedly led the way, introducing the various matters of the Four Supremes pavilions to Lin Sun with saliva flying everywhere. For the rest of the time, Lin Sun wandered around the city like a tourist. In the Welcoming the Immortals Pavilion, the #1 restaurant in the Guide City, one could savor the finest delicacies from the different universes of the boundless universe. Every single one of those delicacies could be said to be made from rare and top-rate ingredient. Not only did they taste extraordinary, they even contained various profundities. Even the cheapest dish was worth 10 Tier 2 Eternal Void Source Crystals, which was equivalent to 10 million Doctrine Crystals. Lin Sun didn't care about this at all. He ordered a table full of all kinds of delicacies and ate happily with Fatty. Before he left, he didn't forget to pack a lot of delicious food, planning to let Xia Ji have a taste when she woke up. By the time Lin Sun left the Welcoming the Immortals Pavilion, he had already squandered more than 100 first-class Eternal Void Source Crystals. That carefree manner of spending money like it was dirt stimulated Fatty to the point that he felt like he was dreaming. He was just a Saint Realm figure. How could he have ever seen such extravagant behavior? Of course, it was nothing for Lin Sun. After leaving the Welcoming the Immortals Pavilion, Lin Sun went to the Wind Gathering Pavilion. This place had the reputation of gathering all the rare treasures of the various realms. There were all kinds of strange divine materials, elixirs, divine materials, gems, cultivation methods, magic treasures from different universes of the boundless universe. There were even some treasures that Lin Sun was used to seeing. Emperor realm figures with rare treasures in the world were tempted, so they bought everything without hesitation. Lin Sun's behavior of spending money like flowing water made the eyes of some beautiful maidservants burn with passion. It was as if they would throw themselves into Lin Sun's arms without hesitation if he nodded. The only regret was that Lin Sun didn't come across any treasures that could really be considered useful. But thinking about it, although his cultivation was only at the 6th level of the Emperor realm, his combat strength was no longer afraid of the Emperor ancestor. Ordinary Emperor treasures were indeed difficult for him to take a fancy to. When Lin Sun walked out of the Wind Gathering Pavilion, he had lost more than 1,000 first-class Eternal Void Source Crystals. Fatty was shocked, envious, and distressed How could one spend so much money? Even the emperor ancestor would not dare to be so extravagant. But Fatty had to admit that Lin Sun had the capital to be extravagant. He was really too rich. Fellow Taoist, can we have a chat? Friend, I am from one of the 7 ancient clans of Tiandu Star Field. I hope to have a chat with you. Some Emperor Realm figures caught up with Lin Sun and chatted with him. Lin Sun's previous actions in the wind-gathering pavilion had attracted their attention. After a short conversation, Lin Sun found out that these Emperor Realm figures came from different universes and had different purposes for contacting him. Some of them hoped that he could join their sects or forces. Some hoped to make friends with Lin Sun and form a good relationship. Some wanted to sell the treasures in their hands to Lin Sun for a good price. Lin Sun declined all of them. He was not interested in these things before he went to the boundless thousand battle domain. Let's go to the Hui Chui market to take a look. Lin Sun walked into the distance. Earlier, he'd heard from the Fatty that the Hui Chui market was the largest trade market in the city of Inducement, and there were a myriad of stalls there. Experts from various universes could set up stalls here and sell treasures. Of course, as long as it was a place like this, there would always be things that people yearned for. After entering the Hui Chui market, Lin Sun walked around and it was an eye-opener for him. He saw many treasures that he had not seen in the starry ancient path. Unfortunately, he did not find any opportunities to pick up along the way, nor did he find any special treasures. Just as Lin Sun was about to leave, he was suddenly stopped by someone. Friend, I want to make a deal with you. It was a group of people, all of them extraordinary and had the aura of the Emperor Realm. Regardless of their gender, age, or cultivation, they all gathered around a young man. They were like stars surrounding the moon. The young man's clothes were whiter than snow, and he walked with a majestic gait. His facial features were handsome, and his bearing was extraordinary. His eyes were as clear as water, showing a kind of tranquil, indifferent, and emotionless aura. It was this person who had stopped Lin Sun before. When he saw the young man and the people around him, Fatty's face suddenly changed, and he showed undisguised awe. Obviously, this group of people was not simple. What deal? Lin Sun glanced at those people, and his eyes fell on the young man in white. The latter's aura was mellow and ethereal, and he seemed peaceful, but in fact, he was a Jewing emperor. However, the depth of his cultivation couldn't be seen through, because the young man's white clothes were obviously a kind of magical treasure that concealed his power. There are too many people here, please come this way. Young man in white as he spoke, he walked away, as if he was not worried that Lin Sun would not follow him. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and followed him. Fatty opened his mouth to speak, but Lin Sun waved his hand to stop him. Your realm is too low. If you talk to me by voice transmission, it will be heard by him. Fatty shuddered and immediately shut his mouth. In a remote corner, the young man in white stood still and then asked the people around him to leave. Then he looked at Lin Sun, who followed him. His eyes were calm and his words were easygoing. I want to buy a treasure from you. Well, it should be a whetstone, and the words sharpen the heart like a sharp edge are engraved on it. Lin Sun looked calm, but he couldn't help but be surprised. After destroying the divine Sunshine Ancient sect, she found a gray stone. It was extremely heavy, and holding it in his hand was like holding a holy mountain. The surface of the stone was as smooth as a mirror, as if it had been polished countless times by a sharp sword over the endless years, and there was a slight depression. On the back there were 4 ancient words engraved, sharpen the heart like a sharp edge. Every single word was like a sword that contained a sharp glow, and he was like a peerless emperor of the sword that was filled with pride and extreme conceit. However, his state of mind was leisurely like the clouds, unrestrained, and carefree. According to what she said, just by looking at himself, One could tell that the master of this whetstone had to be someone with unparalleled attainments in the sword Tao and a carefree and open-minded state of mind, an existence that was as carefree as the wind. Just like a sword immortal. At that time, Lin Sun liked the words sharpen the heart like a sharp edge, so he always carried the whetstone with him. He didn't expect that he would be spied on by a stranger in the City of Guidance. It was unbelievable. Clearly, the other party had sensed the existence of the whetstone through some secret technique or treasure, so he took the initiative to find him. Sorry, I'm not interested in this deal, Lin Sun refused without hesitation. The young man in white was not surprised and said indifferently, You probably don't know the origins of this stone, so you naturally don't know how important it is to me. How about this, as long as you're willing to part with it, I won't frown no matter what your conditions are. Lin Sun shook his head and said, I don't lack anything. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. With that, he turned around and left. The group of martial emperors standing far away by the young man's side revealed cold expressions and were about to stop Lin Sun. Forget it, let him go. The young man in white stopped them. This is the City of Guidance after all. It's not suitable to fight here. His expression was indifferent, as if he didn't care about Lin Sun leaving just like that. Young master, are we just going to let him go like that? Someone asked. The young man in white thought for a moment and said, Send someone to keep an eye on him. This whetstone is related to a legendary figure who has dominated the vast 1,000 worlds for 100,000 years. We must obtain it no matter what. Yes. Someone immediately left to carry out the order. Let's go to the inner city and pay a visit to Emperor Ancestor Yun Yuan at the City Lord's mansion. With that, the young man in white turned around and left with the others. At the same time, Fatty, who was gradually walking away with Lin Sun, couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. He wiped the cold sweat that had seeped out of his forehead and looked like he had just survived a disaster. It was obvious that the young man in white and his party had given Fatty a great deal of shock and pressure. Lin Sun couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and ask, Who are they? Why are you so scared? Chapter 2499. The Fatty took a deep breath and calmed his mind before telling Lin Fan about the group's origins. Heaven Capital Galaxy. It was a universe that was closest to the City of Guidance, which was ranked 5th in the Great 1,000 Worlds. The cultivation civilization there was unprecedentedly brilliant and prosperous. In this vast universe, there were as many emperor clans as there were trees in a forest, and there were countless orthodoxies. Not only were there progenitors, there were even many supreme immortals keeping watch over them. Among these countless forces, the Daheng Sword House was the most powerful one. How terrifying was the foundation of the Daheng Sword House! Over the years, there were more than 100 emperor progenitors who came from the Daheng Sword House, and there was more than one immortal keeping watch over them. Even in the eternal true world, there were many peerless figures from the Daheng Sword House. The white-robed young man from before came from the Daheng Sword House, and his status was extremely noble. He was the descendant of an immortal, and his name was Fang Xuanzhen, also known as Sword Emperor Xuanzhen. He had been cultivating for 9,000 years, and he was now a peerless great emperor who had reached the 7th level of Emperor Realm. The emperors by Fang Xuanzhen's side were all from the Daheng Sword House. The Daheng Sword House was the first orthodoxy in Heaven Capital Galaxy, and Heaven Capital Galaxy was the closest universe to the City of Guidance. It was not an exaggeration to say that the Daheng Sword House had great influence in the City of Guidance. As a local tyrant who had been in the city for many years, the Fatty naturally knew how terrifying the Daheng Sword House was. He also knew how noble Fang Xuanzhen's status was more than anyone else. After understanding all this, Lin Sun only responded with an "oh" and did not show any other reaction. He did not care about the first orthodoxy in Heaven Capital Galaxy or the descendant of an immortal. Even if Fang Xuanzhen was a peerless great emperor, Lin Sun's heart did not waver, and he even felt like laughing. He had cultivated for 9,000 years, and he was only at the 7th level of Emperor Realm. And Lin Sun had only cultivated for a little over 100 years. When he saw that Lin Sun did not care, the fatty became anxious and reminded him, "Senior, in my opinion, it's best if you agree to Fang Xuanzhen's deal. To tell you the truth, if you weren't an emperor, you would have died just now." Lin Sun raised an eyebrow. "Isn't it forbidden to kill in the city of extradition?" The fatty sneered and quickly glanced around before whispering, "That depends on the person. Under normal circumstances, no one would dare to break the order, but Fang Xuanzhen's identity is different. The relationship between the Daheng Sword House and the city governor's mansion is not ordinary. Even if Fang Xuanzhen kills people in the city protector will turn a blind eye." Lin Sun nodded. "I see. Of course, no matter how bold Fang Xuanzhen is, he wouldn't dare to make a move against an Emperor Realm cultivator. Otherwise, he would be ostracized by all the Emperor Realm cultivators in the city." Fatty thought for a moment and said, "However, it's best not to offend such a person. If something unexpected happens, it'll be a disaster." Lin Sun hummed in acknowledgement. He didn't mind it at all. It wouldn't be long before he left the city of inducement, so he didn't care about these things. "Come, let's go to the 8 Winds Sky Viewing Tower for tea," Lin Sun said as he walked forward. The 8 Winds Sky Viewing Tower was known as the most well-informed place in the city of inducement. While drinking tea there, one could also inquire about all kinds of news. However, the cost of living there was extremely high. Unless it was absolutely necessary, ordinary Emperor Realm cultivators would rarely go there. As expected, the fatty was attracted and led the way in front happily. As a Saint Realm cultivator, he had never been to the 8 Winds Sky Viewing Tower even once after spending so many years in the city. It couldn't be helped. Not only was he poor, but his status was also too low at the same time. City Governor's Mansion. The city protector, Emperor Yunyuan, stood with his hands behind his back in a grand and ancient hall. He was dressed in a jade robe and wore a high hat and a wide belt. He had a youthful face and a tall figure. Only the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes gave off an aura of vicissitude. In front of him, a Taoist diagram unfolded. It showed the scene of the entire city of inducement, down to the smallest detail. Moreover, as Emperor Yunyuan pointed at a certain spot, the scene in the Taoist diagram would suddenly expand several times, showing even more subtle scenes. The most amazing thing was that the Taoist diagram was showing the scene that was happening in the city at this moment. Pedestrians weaved together and carriages shuttled back and forth. It was bustling and lively. After a while, Emperor Yunyuan retracted his gaze and asked, "In the past month, how many Emperor Realm cultivators have entered the city and collected their communication talismans?" Beside him, an old servant who had been standing respectfully replied, "Reporting to my lord, there are a total of 119 people." Emperor Ancestor Yun Yuan furrowed his brows. There were countless martial emperors that gathered in the gateway city every day, but after a month, only 100 or so people had reported to the Great Thousand Battle Domain. This number was too little. The old servant explained in a low voice, "My lord, you also know that not all Emperor Realm cultivators in this world have the guts to enter the vast Thousand Battle Domain. Out of 10 people, not even one would dare to go. After all, that place is too dangerous, and there is only a slim chance of survival." Emperor Yunyuan interrupted, "Let's not talk about this. Do you know how many of these Emperor Realm cultivators have set foot on the absolute Tao path?" The old servant hesitated for a moment, then said in a low voice, "Currently, 13 people have been detected." Emperor Yunyuan's frown deepened. After a while, he snorted coldly, "Each generation is really worse than the previous. The vast thousand world is so vast, but only 13 absolute great emperors have the guts to go to the vast thousand battle domain every month. Isn't it a joke?" The old servant smiled apologetically. No matter how vast the vast thousand world is, it is still not our eternal world. My lord, you don't have to be disappointed. Emperor Ancestor Yun Yuan shook his head. I'm not disappointed. It's just that it won't be long before the trial competition for the power of Order Origin begins. Before that, if I can find some powerful Emperor Realm cultivators for my use, it will be enough to increase my chances of success. Suddenly, a respectful voice came from outside the hall. My lord, Sword Emperor Xianjun from the Eternal Sword House, has brought a group of his subordinates to pay a visit. Fang Xuanjun? Emperor Yunyuan thought for a moment, then said, just ask him to come alone. Not long after, Fang Xuanjun, dressed in snow-white robes, was led into the hall by a servant. The successor of the Eternal Sword House, Fang Xuanjun, greets you, senior. He cupped his fist. Emperor Yunyuan glanced at him and smiled. Your father has a close relationship with the He family. You don't have to be so polite, my dear nephew. He paused for a moment, then asked, my dear nephew, are you here to train in the vast thousand battle domains? Fang Xuanjun nodded. That is indeed my plan. But before I go to the vast thousand battle domains, I have another matter that I need your help with. What is it? Emperor Yunyuan asked. Fang Xuanjun said after some consideration, I want to deal with a person. He has a treasure that I urgently need. I originally planned to pay a price to exchange for it, but the person is stubborn. I have no choice but to use this method. Grand Emperor Yun Yuan grunted and said slowly, what is this person's identity? A peak great emperor, Fang Xuanjun said. Emperor Yun Yuan narrowed his eyes. After a moment of silence, he suddenly snorted. My dear nephew, I can turn a blind eye if it's an ordinary matter. But if I help you deal with a peak great emperor in the city, that's ruining the He family's reputation and prestige. Fang Xuanjun's expression changed slightly, but he still said, Senior, if you can help me, I'm willing to fight for the He family after I pass the vast thousand battle domains. I'll participate in the trial for the source of order. All of a sudden, Emperor Ancestor Yun Yuan's gaze changed subtly. He sized Fang Xuanjun up and said, You actually know about the trial? Did your father tell you about it? Fang Xuanjun nodded. That's right. Progenitor Yun Yuan also knew that Fang Xuanjun's father was an immortal with great divine abilities. A long time ago, he had wandered about the eternal true world and made many friends there. It was only logical that he would be able to obtain this sort of information. But soon Emperor Yunyuan shook his head. No, I won't allow this to happen, at least not in the Guide City. Fang Xuanjun was stunned. He thought that he had made a condition that was enough to tempt Emperor Yunyuan. Who would have thought that things would turn out contrary to his wishes? Just as he was about to say something, Emperor Yunyuan ordered him to leave. If there's nothing else, please go back. Fang Xuanjun cupped his fists and said, Then I won't disturb your cultivation. He turned and left. When he walked out of the city lord's mansion, a gloomy look appeared on his calm and handsome face. He was just an Emperor Yunyuan who had never reached the peak. If he wasn't from the He family on the other side, how would he dare to reject him? Fang Xuanjun took a deep breath and sent a message to the emperors around him. Keep a close eye on that guy. If we can't do it in the Guide City, we'll take action when he leaves. Yes. Everyone obeyed. In the city lord's mansion, Emperor Yunyuan sneered. He was just a descendant of the Eternal Sword House. So what if his father was an immortal? In the He family's eyes, he was just an ordinary person. Someone go and find out who Fang Xuanjun is targeting. If it's really a peerless great emperor, find out his background. Emperor Yunyuan gave the order not long after. He was the city guardian sent by the He family to oversee the Guide City. He only had one mission, and that was to find a group of dazzling figures that could be of use to the He family during the 3,000 years that the He family controlled the Guide City. Maintaining order in the city and protecting the emperors from harm was a way to display the He family's prestige and reputation. Under such circumstances, how could he break the city's rules just for Fang Xuanzhen? Moreover, Fang Xuanzhen's opponent was a peak great emperor. If he really agreed to this, not only would his reputation as the city guardian be tarnished, but he would also implicate the He family behind him and damage their prestige. Which emperor would dare to come to the guide city in the future? If that was the case, how could he find powerful figures for the He family? Fang Xuanzhen, if you disregard my objection and do whatever you want in the city, even your father won't be able to save you. Emperor Yunyuan's eyes flashed with a faint coldness. P.S. Many people feel that the updates aren't good enough. Oh, Goldfish will announce that there will be 5 updates on the day of the Lantern Festival. In other words, the day after tomorrow. Chapter 2500. They strolled around the city for 3 days. Lin Sun then decided to head to the city lord's residence to exchange for a token. According to the fatty's instructions, a batch of emperors would be sent to the gates of the Earth and Earth realm every month and enter the vast 1,000 battle domains. The next day, a new batch of emperors would set off. Senior, you must take care of yourself. I have lived in the City of Guidance for many years, and I have seen many incredibly dazzling emperors head to Great 1,000 Battles realm, but there are very few powerful warriors who can reach Eternal True World smoothly. Most of them died in Great 1,000 Battles realm, and no one even managed to collect their corpses. The fatty was reluctant to part with Lin Sun, his eyes brimming with tears. In the past 3 days, Lin Sun took him to wander around and bought some items for him, all of which were treasures that he had dreamed of in the past. Lin Sun had also brought him to different top-notch places, which had broadened his horizons and made him excited. It was definitely an experience that he would never forget for the rest of his life. If we're fated, we'll definitely meet again, Lin Sun said with a smile. The fatty nodded fiercely. Lin Sun immediately left. Halfway there, the fatty's shout suddenly rang out behind him. Senior, I suddenly forgot to tell you something. What is it? Lin Sun stopped and turned around. I'm Baol, the fatty shouted while waving his hand. Lin Sun couldn't help but sweat. He had indeed forgotten to ask for the fatty's name along the way. All right, I'll remember it. Lin Sun nodded solemnly and headed straight for the city lord's residence. 15 minutes later, the majestic and ancient city lord's residence appeared in Lin Sun's vision. He paused and thought to himself, I'd like to see if you dare to follow me to the vast 1,000 battle domains. In the past 3 days, he had long sensed that someone had been watching him in the dark. He had already seen through the other party's identity. It was someone close to Fang Xuanzhen of the Daheng Sword House. He didn't care about it, but he was curious. What secret was hidden in the sharpening stone that could sharpen one's heart that made the other party want it so much? It was a pity that they were in the city of Guide and couldn't fight. Otherwise, with Lin Sun's temper, he would have captured the other party immediately. Lin Sun shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He walked towards the city lord's residence. When his figure disappeared, one of the great emperors in the dark hurriedly sent out a message. The target is the city lord's mansion. It's highly likely that he's going to register for the Great 1,000 Battles domain. Young master, please make a decision. The news was sent to Fang Xuanzhen immediately. He thought for a while and made a decision. Then let's go to the vast 1,000 battle domain. Only he was clearly aware that the sword whetstone was a treasure that even his father yearned for, and its value was unimaginable. Initially, Fang Xuanzhen had already sent a message to invite his father over to snatch the sword whetstone. But from the looks of it now, they couldn't wait any longer. Let's go. Fang Xuanzhen immediately led a group of martial emperors to the governor's mansion. City Lord Residence. Name: Ling Xuanzi. Family background: The Starry Sky Ancient Path. Cultivation base: 6th level Emperor Realm. Lin Sun was having a conversation with an old man of the city lord's mansion in a special hall for signing up and exchanging tokens. The old man held a golden message talisman in his hand. Every time Lin Sun answered a message, the old man would use a secret technique to engrave the message into the talisman. When Lin Sun reported his cultivation base as 6th level Emperor Realm, the old man raised his eyes and said meaningfully, "You seem to be a little modest. It's better for you to report truthfully." As he spoke, he engraved the words Ju Ing 6th level Emperor Realm on the golden talisman. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and did not say anything. After all, the name he reported was his 4th senior brother's Taoist name. The old man passed the golden talisman to Lin Sun and said, "It's been a long time since a peerless great emperor came out from the starry sky ancient path. My lord is very interested in you. I wonder if it's convenient for you to meet him?" "Meet me?" Lin Sun was startled. "Rest assured, it's definitely a good thing." The old man smiled with a kind look in his eyes. "My lord respects peerless great emperors very much." Lin Sun thought for a while and nodded in agreement. Not long after, the old man led Lin Sun to a grand and ancient palace to meet Emperor Yun Yuan, the guardian of the city. He was dressed in a jade robe and looked like a teenager. He had an extraordinary bearing. When he saw Lin Sun, the first thing Emperor Yun Yuan said was, "My young friend, do you know that someone came here and tried to get my permission to harm you in the city?" Lin Sun thought for a while. Was it Fang Xuanzhen? Imperial ancestor Yun Yuan laughed and didn't continue the topic. Instead, he said, "I've come to meet with little friend this time to witness your splendor. I also have something to discuss with little friend." As he spoke, he invited Lin Sun to sit down and brewed tea himself. Lin Sun thought for a while and said with a smile, "I'm all ears." As soon as they met, Emperor Yun Yuan told Lin Sun about a killing tribulation from Fang Xuanzhen and then wanted to talk to Lin Sun. Emperor Yun Yuan did not simply want to get to know Lin Sun. Emperor Yun Yuan handed a cup of tea to Lin Sun and then returned to his seat. He said, "My young friend, you must have some speculations in your heart, so I won't beat around the bush. 50 years later, the He clan will send a peerless great emperor to a chaotic secret land to fight for the source of order that was born there. At that time, 7 immortal emperor clans, including the He clan, will participate. Each clan is only allowed to send 1 clansman and 3 Tao servants. My young friend, you must also know that a normal Emperor Realm cultivator is completely useless in this sort of battle, but an existence like Emperor Juing is 1 in 1,000, even in the eternal true world. My clan is determined to win this operation, so I want to send 3 peerless great emperors to act as Tao servants to accompany great Emperor Ju Yuan." As he said this, Emperor Yun Yuan looked at Lin Sun with a smile. "Right now, there are still 2 vacancies for the role of Tao servant. I wonder if my young friend is interested?" Lin Sun finally understood Emperor Yun Yuan's intentions. He thought for a while and said, "From what I see, you must have found many candidates before you met me, right?" There were countless Emperor Realm figures gathering in the guiding city every day. Among those who signed up to go to the vast 1,000 battle domains, there was no lack of great Emperor Ju Yuan. Lin Sun didn't think that Emperor Yun Yuan favored him so much that he specifically talked to him about this matter. As expected, Emperor Yun Yuan had a look of admiration on his face. "My young friend, you are very meticulous and perceptive. You are right. In this month, I have personally met with 13 peerless great emperors. The strongest among them is at the peak of the 8th level of the Emperor Realm, and the weakest is at the 5th level of the Emperor Realm. In a month, there were 13 great emperors who signed up to go to the vast 1,000 battle domains." Lin Sun could not help but feel emotional when he heard this news. On the ancient path of stars, he was known as the first peerless great emperor in 100,000 years. But in the guiding city, there were not many peerless great emperors like him, but they were not rare either. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun said, It is said that the vast 1,000 battle domains are filled with unfathomable dangers. There is a slim chance of survival, but not everyone can reach the eternal world. Emperor Yun Yuan nodded and sighed. There is nothing we can do about it. It has been like this since ancient times. If the cultivators of the vast 1,000 world want to go to the eternal world, they can only go to the vast 1,000 battle domains. Then, he smiled and said seriously, but I believe that only when the sand is washed away by the waves can gold be seen. As long as they can get through the vast 1,000 battle domains and reach the eternal world, they are destined to become true heroes and overlords of the Emperor Path. Even in the eternal world, they can shine and lead the world. Lin Sun immediately understood. Emperor Yun Yuan's words were basically saying that only those who could get through the vast 1,000 battle domains could take on the role of a Tao servant of the He family. If they died in the vast 1,000 battle domains, then there would be no need to talk about anything else. In other words, Emperor Yun Yuan was casting a wide net to see which fish could really make it out of the vast 1,000 battle domains. My young friend, it is not that the He family is unwilling to help. In truth, no matter who enters the vast 1,000 battle domains, they will not be able to get any help, and there is no shortcut for them to choose. Forget about the He family, even the other immortal emperor clans in the eternal world will not be able to interfere, Emperor Yun Yuan said gently. This is an iron law. It will never change, and it will never change. However, my young friend, if you have the chance to reach the eternal true world in the future, I can promise you that as long as you show the letter talisman in your hand as proof, you will obtain the He family's protection. At that time, with my young friend's ability, you will even be able to take on the position of a guest elder in the He family. This was an exchange. Since ancient times, almost every emperor who set off from the guiding city would be roped in and promised like this. For immortal emperor clans like the He family, they needed to expand their forces, so they needed an endless stream of experts to join them. For the emperors of the vast 1,000 world, after reaching the eternal world, they needed to establish themselves in that unfamiliar place. If they could obtain the help and protection of the local forces, it would naturally be for the best. This kind of exchange could be said to be mutually beneficial. Of course, the prerequisite was that they could reach the eternal world from the vast 1,000 battle domains alive. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun nodded and said, If I can reach the eternal world, I will pay a visit to the He family. What exactly was the eternal world like? Lin Sun did not know. If he could use the He family, the local immortal emperor clan, to understand the eternal world, it would also be a good choice. Moreover, at that time, with the He family's protection, the Permitha Luo family would not have thought that they would be under the command of an immortal emperor clan that was not weaker than them. Seeing Lin Sun agree, Emperor Yun Yuan let out a hearty laugh. After chatting for a while, Lin Sun stood up and bade farewell. Emperor Yun Yuan personally sent Lin Sun off and reminded him, My young friend, you must remember to meet at the Guiding Tao altar in the east of the city tomorrow morning. Do not be late, or else if you want to go to the vast 1,000 battle domains, you will have to wait until this time next month. Literature Library. Chapter 2501. As soon as Lin Sun walked out of the Castellan mansion, he saw a group of people led by Fang Xuanzhen coming from afar. The atmosphere suddenly became subtle, and the air seemed to have stagnated. Fang Xuanzhen narrowed his eyes and smiled indifferently. He stopped there and said, It seems that we're going to meet in the vast 1,000 battle domains. Lin Sun also smiled. I'm also looking forward to learning about the secrets of sharpening one's heart from you. After saying that, he walked straight ahead and passed by Fang Xuanzhen and the others. His silhouette was about to disappear. Fang Xuanzhen suddenly turned around and said loudly, Friend, is there really no room for negotiation? Without looking back, Lin Sun just waved his hand and soon disappeared in the vast crowd. Humph! This fellow obviously won't give up until he hits a brick wall. Young master, we might as well make a move tonight. After we kill him, we'll leave the city of Guide at the first possible moment. Even if the city guard is furious because of this, he won't be able to do anything to us," an Emperor Realm figure said with a cold look in his eyes. The others also looked unfriendly. As big shots from the Daheng Sword House, they had never met someone who dared to refuse them like this. Fang Xuanzhen's eyes flickered, and he said indifferently after a while, "There's no harm in going to the vast thousand battle domains. I also want to see how powerful the top figures in the vast thousand world are." After saying that, he went straight to the Castellan mansion. On the same day, Fang Xuanzhen and the others signed up one after another and obtained the token to go to the Gate of Earthkuan. They also learned from the Castellan mansion that Lin Sun's name was Ling Xuanzi and he came from the Starry Sky Ancient Path. After knowing this, Fang Xuanzhen and the others became even more fearless. The Starry Sky Ancient Path? It was only a universe that had declined to the point it was on the verge of falling out of the top 100 rankings in the boundless universe. How powerful could such a place produce such a powerful character? The next morning, in the east of the city, an ancient Dao platform stood towering there. It covered an area of around 3 kilometers, and it was completely pitch black and suffused with a chaotic and obscure aura. Numerous eternal laws of the Grand Tao were branded on the Tao platform, and they transformed into numerous mysterious and unfathomable cloud diagrams of the Grand Tao. The Guide Altar, an ancient Taoist altar that could travel through the heavenly curtain of Tao. The immortal Tao inscribed on it could resist and resolve the strange disasters in the heavenly curtain of Tao. At this moment, many figures had gathered near the Guide Altar. Led by the guardian Yun Yuan, a group of He clan experts and those emperors who were about to go to the Gate of Earthkuan were gathered. When Lin Sun arrived, he could tell at a glance that there were a total of 134 emperors who were about to enter the realm with him. Fang Xuanzhen and the others were among them. At the same time, Lin Sun also keenly noticed that there were a total of 16 great emperors, including himself and Fang Xuanzhen. Emperor Xuanzhen and Yuan Tian. An emperor, even among those martial emperors who had yet to reach the apex, there were many martial emperor ancestors. Chun and the Lin as the He Lin, He Yuan, Lin He. Lin Lin, A Lin. And Saw. Little friend Ling Xuanzi, you're the only one left. Seeing Lin Sun walking over, Emperor Ancestor Yun Yuan greeted with a smile. Lin Sun nodded and walked over alone. Many eyes fell on Lin Sun, more or less sizing him up. Some were scrutinizing, some were vigilant, and some were disapproving. Fang Xuanzhen smiled faintly and did not say anything, but the people around him looked at Lin Sun with surprise. Undisguised coldness. In this regard, Lin Sun didn't care at all. He found a place by himself and meditated like an old monk. But through the conversation nearby, Lin Sun noticed several noteworthy characters. A man in a purple robe with a white jade belt around his waist and long hair draped over his shoulders. His eyes were filled with obscure golden light and he was surrounded by a group of martial emperors. Herding Heaven. A peak great emperor with a famous identity. It was said that the clan he came from had an immortal realm peerless character. On the other hand, he himself was an extraordinary overlord of a certain universe, and his might oppressed a world. Out of all the great emperors present, he was the only one with a cultivation base of the 8th rank emperor realm. A skinny, dark-skinned monk in a monk's robe and straw sandals stood there quietly and calmly like a rock. This monk walked alone like Lin Sun. When the people present sized this monk up, many of them were fearful. Yunlu, a great emperor from the Great Lane world, at the peak of the 7th rank emperor realm. His cultivation was unbreakable and unfathomable. The Great Lane world was originally a Buddhist world in the boundless world. Together with the Little West Heaven, they were known as the 2 ancestral lands of Buddhism. And Yunlu came from the Little Lane Temple, the first Buddhist sect in the Lane world. The Great Lane World and the Little Lane Temple were wonderful in size. They echoed each other, just like the Buddhist hymn, a world in a flower, a Bodhi in a leaf. Besides hurting Heaven and Yunlu, there were 3 other people who caught Lin Sun's attention. One was Ning Daoji, a peak great emperor from the mysterious world of Dongting. He was elegant and had a bronze wine pot in his hand. The other was a man in a scholar's robe from the genuine world of literati. His temples were white and he had a green bamboo slip hanging on his waist. From their conversation, Lin Sun only knew that this person was called Reckless Scholarly Emperor. The last one was a woman wearing black armor, a black veil, and a black spear. She was shrouded in a dark mist and looked mysterious and frightening. She came from the Nether Star True Territory and was called the Jade Star Absolute Emperor. She seemed to be at the peak of the 5th rank Emperor realm, but Lin Sun sensed that this woman's combat strength was not that simple. This was purely a hunch. Of course, these were just the powerful figures that Lin Sun sensed through his preliminary observation. There were more than 100 great emperors who dared to sign up for the boundless 1,000 battle domains. At the same time, Lin Sun also sensed that many people were quietly sizing him up. Finally, at this moment, Emperor Yunyuan, who had been waiting for a long time, suddenly smiled warmly and walked into the distance. He saw a group of people walking over from afar, led by a man in a simple robe. His face was as beautiful as jade and he was handsome and charming. He carried a long sword on his back, and when he walked, Tao runes appeared under his feet. Beside him, there was a group of Emperor Realm cultivators with different appearances. They followed him with solemn expressions. There were even Emperor Ancestor Realm cultivators among them, but they were like followers, following the man in the long robe and carrying a sword. There was a commotion and many people were alarmed. When Fang Xuanzhen, Yun Lu, Ning Daoji, and the other peak great emperors saw the man in the robe with the sword, their eyes narrowed. Obviously, this group of people was not simple. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun's heart shook violently and his eyes narrowed. Next to the man in the robe with the sword, there was a man and a woman. The man was thin and wore a white robe. His eyes were as clear as a lake, while the woman's aura was cold and ethereal. They were Mi Wuya and Yenyu. The former was a core disciple of the Panwu Dao court and was ranked first on the All Heavens King Sage list before Lin Sun became an emperor. He dominated his peers and was famous throughout the starry sky. On the other hand, Yenyu was a core disciple of the Black-Yellow Dao court and a peerless woman in the top 10 of the All Heavens King Sage list. When they fought for the Chaos Treasure Mount Buzhou in the ancient Immortal Forbidden Zone, both Yenyu and Mi Wuya were defeated by Lin Sun. It was also from then on that Lin Sun had never seen them again. Who would have thought that he would see them here after so many years? Lin Sun had a bad feeling in his heart at the first moment because he was currently using the name of his 4th senior brother, Ling Xuanzi. If Mi Wuya and Ling Hongzhuang exposed his identity, even though it wouldn't cause any trouble, it would still arouse their suspicions. But soon, Lin Sun realized that it was a false alarm. Although Mi Wuya and Ling Hongzhuang saw him, they were slightly surprised but did not say anything. Lin Sun could not guess why, but at least it made him feel more at ease. Then, he could not help but wonder why Mi Wuya and Ling Hongzhuang were the followers of the man in the robe with the sword. He looked up and saw Emperor Ancestor Yun Yuan talking to the man in the robe with a sword. They looked friendly and smiled warmly. The man in the robe was neither humble nor arrogant, and he was calm and composed. Just by looking at his attitude, one could tell that the identity of this long-robed man with a sword on his back was definitely not simple. After a while, Emperor Ancestor Yun Yuan waved his sleeve and said in a clear voice, "Everyone, please ascend the Dao altar one by one." Obviously, all the people who had registered to go to the gate of Earthkuan had arrived. Immediately, everyone moved one by one, walking up the Dao altar and standing in different positions. Not long after, a rumble resounded through the sky, and the Tao altar that was thousands of meters wide levitated into the air. It was wrapped in a dazzling aura of immortality, and it moved towards the distant horizon. At this moment, all the cultivators in the city were alarmed, and their gazes shot towards the Tao altar that was moving towards the distance. Another group of great emperors has set out since ancient times. The path has been littered with emperor bones and emperor blood. How many people have truly reached this point? This is the temptation of the secrets of immortality and eternity. It makes all the great emperors in the world advance wave after wave, even though they know that the odds are against them. All sorts of discussions rang out. Fatty Baol looked at the Tao altar in the distance and could not help but murmur, "Senior, take care," that night. A man with an aura of immortality all over his body arrived at the city and went straight to the city lord's residence. When he found out that Fang Xuanzhen and his group had already left on the Tao altar in the morning, the man's expression darkened. "If anything happens to my son, I promise that I won't let the matter rest so easily." The man was furious, and he left with a flick of his sleeve. Watching him leave, Emperor Ancestor Yun Yuan could not help but let out a cold snort and did not say anything. He was just an immortal from the Daheng Sword House. So what if he did not want to let the matter rest? The man was Fang Xuanzhen's father, a grand supreme patriarch of the Daheng Sword House. He was a terrifying being who had surpassed the ancestor realm and was an immortal in the Tao-seeking realm. But it was clear that Emperor Ancestor Yun Yuan, who came from the immortal imperial clan of the eternal world, did not care about the man's threat at all. At the same time, after the man left the city, he could not help but let out a long sigh. Not only was he worried about Fang Xuanzhen's safety after he entered the Great Thousand Battles realm, but he also felt an indescribable regret, sharpening his heart like a blade. The treasure that he had been searching for countless years had slipped away just like that. P.S. Tomorrow is the Lantern Festival, and the Goldfish will do their best to release 5 chapters. At noon tomorrow, they will release 2 chapters in a row. If you still don't vote, then the Goldfish will have to continue begging for more. Chapter 2502. Within the Tao Restriction Canopy. The strange and ominous calamity turned into a torrent that swept through like a hurricane. The terrifying aura could easily tear apart any Emperor Realm cultivator. The Tao Guide altar moved horizontally, emanating an obscure and undying force, and only then was it able to neutralize this force one by one. However, its speed had become slower. Lin Sun looked up. The Tao Restriction Canopy was seen as a forbidden area in the universe. Even immortal realm cultivators did not dare to enter it. Lin Sun finally understood how terrifying the Tao Restriction Canopy was when he was in it. Even with the protection of the Tao altar, it was still terrifying just by looking at it from afar. The other people on the Tao leading altar were also watching with different expressions on their faces. Everyone. Suddenly, a gray-haired Emperor Ancestor Realm old man spoke up, drawing everyone's attention. He smiled. "I have a suggestion. Since we're fated to enter the gate of the earthly realm together, why don't we form an alliance? As far as I know, in the past, everyone who went to the Great Thousand Battles domain did the same thing." Many people's eyes lit up when they heard that. The vast thousand battle domains were filled with danger and killing intent. Countless emperors' corpses were buried on the path to the eternal world. If they could travel together, it would naturally be better than traveling alone. However, there were also people who were indifferent. Fang Xuanzhen's group, the long-robed man's group, and some other top figures turned a blind eye to it. Someone even sneered, "There are many cases of people killing each other in the vast thousand battle domains. So what if we form an alliance? In the end, people are not of one mind and will be on guard against each other. Once they encounter a difficult situation, they will definitely fall apart. They are no different from a disorderly crowd." Many people agreed with that statement. All of them were from different universes and worlds. Every single one of them possessed extraordinary might, and they seemed to be existences that were overlords and overlords in their respective worlds. The more they experienced the vicissitudes of life, and the more powerful they were, the less likely it was for them to work together and work together. We can form an alliance, but only for small matters. If we really encounter a life and death situation or an extremely difficult situation, we will help if we can. Suddenly, Ning Daoji chuckled. This great Emperor Ju Tong from the Dongting realm was elegant and calm. Many people were tempted by his words. The monarch ancestor realm old man who made the suggestion smiled and said, "You're right, fellow Taoist. How about this, if you're willing to form an alliance, just state your attitude." Immediately, most of the great emperors who hadn't reached the pinnacle level agreed to the alliance. Moreover, he seemed to intend to follow the lead of the old man and Ning Daoji. This was also an act of seeking benefits and avoiding harm. The great emperors knew very well that an alliance would only bring benefits to existences like them. It wouldn't bring much harm to them. Gradually, as more and more emperors expressed their willingness to form an alliance, the situation became more and more delicate. The people who had formed an alliance had formed a large camp. As for those who were not allied, they each formed a small group. For example, Fang Xuanzhen, the man in a robe with a sword, Mu Tian, Mad Confucian Emperor, Jade Star Absolute Emperor, and other peerless figures were followed by a group of great emperors, forming their own forces. Only Lin Sun and the monk Yunlu from the little Lane temple of the great Lane world had been standing alone. "Fellow Taoist Yunlu, why don't you join us?" Ning Daoji invited him with a smile. A peerless figure like him naturally knew that if he could pull Yunlu into his camp, it would be enough to improve the strength of this alliance. Yunlu was thin, dressed in a monk's robe and straw shoes, like a rock. He thought for a moment and shook his head. "I'm used to walking alone." This was equivalent to a refusal. This made many people who wanted to form an alliance a little disappointed. Ning Daoji was not discouraged. He smiled and said, "Anyway, if you're interested in joining us, we'll always welcome you." Then he looked at Lin Sun. "Fellow Taoist, would you like to join us?" Lin Sun shook his head. "Sorry, I'm used to being alone." Ning Daoji smiled and said, it doesn't matter." At this time, someone suddenly snorted and said, "How many years has it been? It's not easy for a peerless great emperor like you to come out from such a shabby place like the starry sky ancient path. But you insist on doing things your own way. If something happens to you in the vast thousand battle domain, it'll be a pity." Lin Sun looked up and saw that the one who spoke was an emperor ancestor who participated in the alliance. He looked like a young man, but he was obviously an old monster. He seemed to be a little unhappy with Lin Sun's refusal to join Ning Daoji. In fact, the others more or less had the same displeasure on their faces. This made Lin Sun feel a little strange. When Yunlu refused, these guys were just disappointed and didn't dare to show any displeasure. But when it was Lin Sun's turn, they all looked the same. From this difference, it could be seen that they didn't respect him as much as they did Yunlu. "Is it because I came from the starry sky ancient path and I'm not as famous as Yunlu?" Lin Sun vaguely felt that this should be the case. After thinking for a while, he pointed at Fang Xuanzhen and said to the young emperor ancestor, "When we reach the vast thousand battle domain, it's very likely that Taoist Fang Xuanzhen and I will become enemies. If you're not afraid of getting into trouble, I'm more than happy to form an alliance with you." Everyone was stunned and their expressions changed slightly. The emperor ancestor who mocked Lin Sun earlier also shut his mouth and looked a little unnatural. None of them dared to underestimate Fang Xuanzhen's strength. Even Ning Daoji couldn't help but be stunned and kept silent. Fang Xuanzhen couldn't help raising his brows and looked at Lin Sun indifferently. "It's up to you whether you want to become enemies or not. We haven't reached the vast thousand battle domain yet, so you still have a chance to change your mind." Lin Sun's words confirmed Lin Sun's words, causing the faces of the allied emperors to become even more unnatural. Lin Sun smiled and didn't say anything. "You're from the starry sky, ancient path?" Suddenly, the long-robed man with a sword on his back spoke. His eyes were like dazzling lightning and extremely frightening. His voice was low and deep and contained an oppressive majesty. Lin Sun secretly glanced at Mi Wia and Yen Yuro before saying, "That's right." The long-robed man said, "I heard that a peerless great emperor called Lin Daoyuan has appeared on the starry sky ancient path. Is that you?" "Young master, it's not him. I've seen Lin Daoyuan before. He's overbearing and arrogant. He's completely different from this Taoist," Yen Yuro said in a low voice before Lin Sun could speak. Slap! An old woman who looked like she had one foot in the grave beside the long-robed man raised her hand and slapped Yen Yuro. She scolded coldly. "How can a little slut like you have the right to interrupt when the young master is speaking? If you don't behave yourself, I'll cripple you." A red and swollen palm print appeared on Yen Yuro's beautiful and fair face. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, and her hair was disheveled. It was clear how powerful the slap was. This caused Lin Sun's eyes to narrow. He couldn't figure out why Yen Yuro would do such a thing. They were once enemies in the past. However, Yen Yuro lowered her head and trembled. She said in fear and trepidation, "Granny, please calm down. I won't dare to do it again." "Humph, uneducated thing. If the young master didn't value your talent and bones, I would have killed you long ago," the old woman said coldly. This scene caused everyone nearby to shiver. In their eyes, Yen Yuro was a third-level great emperor. Her appearance, grace, and charm were all outstanding. However, even an old woman beside the long-robed man dared to scold her like a slave. "What? You don't even dare to admit who you are?" The long-robed man did not seem to care about these trivial matters. He only stared at Lin Sun with an aggressive look. Lin Sun laughed, but there was no change in his emotions. "Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to me like this?" Previously, Misty Rain Ro had clearly been trying to help him, but because of a single sentence, she had been slapped in the face. She had lost all face and been humiliated. This made Lin Sun extremely angry. He naturally would not be polite anymore. Hua! As soon as he said this, the crowd went into an uproar. They all revealed looks of disbelief. "Ha, interesting. You don't even know the Imperial Wind Sword Emperor Wen Shaoheng from the Immortal Emperor clan, one of the 5 ultimate emperors of the Wen clan. Interesting, very interesting." Fang Xuanzhen, who was hostile to Lin Sun, was the first to laugh mockingly. The people around him laughed as well. The Wen clan. Wen Shaoheng. Lin Sun suddenly realized why Emperor Yun Yuan was so enthusiastic when the man in a robe with a sword appeared. He was from the Eternal World's Immortal Emperor clan, the Wen clan. Wen Heng Peng He. These 4 immortal emperor clans had taken turns to control the guiding city outside the Earthkuan World Gate since ancient times. Their foundation was naturally extraordinary. It was no wonder that Fang Xuanzhen, Yun Lu, Ning Daoji, and the others revealed grave and wary expressions when they first saw Wen Shaoheng. At that moment, the crowd went into an uproar. Everyone was shocked. They undoubtedly thought that Lin Sun's words had offended Wen Shaoheng. As expected, Wen Shaoheng's expression darkened slightly. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. "You're asking for death." The old woman was even more anxious to protect her master. She was the first to step forward and stared coldly at Lin Sun. "Now, you'd better kneel down and apologize to our young master. Otherwise, the vast 1,000 battles domain will be your burial ground." Her words caused the crowd to fall into a dead silence. It was extremely oppressive. Everyone knew that if the Wen clan dared to say this, they would dare to do it. However, Lin Sun's expression was calm. He looked at the gloomy old woman and said indifferently, "Old thing, you should be glad that you're under the heavenly curtain of Tao restriction. Otherwise, you would already be dead because of what you said." Chapter 2503. Lin Sun was not afraid. Ever since he was young, he had slaughtered his way through, and he had experienced countless threats. Whether it was the orthodoxies in the ancient desolation domain or the great Tao courts in the starry sky ancient path, none of them made him retreat. Now, he was crossing the starry sky alone and was about to enter the vast thousand battle domain. Why would he care about these threats? If Lin Sun's previous words were to be said that the ignorant were fearless, thus, the words that were directed at the old woman had a completely different meaning. Everyone was shocked and in disbelief. How could Lin Sun be so daring when he knew that the other party was from the immortal Emperor clan, the One family? The old woman's face turned green from anger and a terrifying killing intent surged from her body. Just as she was about to say something, she was stopped by Wen Xiaoheng, who said, "He's half right. We can't fight under the Tao restriction sky canopy. Since that's the case, why bother arguing? Young master, this person is too despicable. If we don't get rid of him, I won't be able to vent my anger," the old woman said hatefully. Wen Xiaoheng nodded and did not say anything else. The atmosphere was heavy and no one spoke at this moment. But everyone knew that Lin Sun was not only seen as an enemy by Fang Xuanzhen, but he had also offended the One family. When they arrived at the vast thousand battle domain, his situation was bound to be bad. In fact, he might not even survive. For a moment, they looked at Lin Sun with pity in their eyes. A great Emperor Juing, who had painstakingly walked out of the starry sky ancient path, wouldn't be able to live for long. Lin Sun ignored them. Just as he had said, if he wasn't passing through the Tao restriction sky canopy, he would have attacked without any hesitation. Suddenly, Fang Xuanzhen sent a voice transmission to Chen Shi. "Friend, if you hand over that whetstone right now, I can lend you a hand and resolve this calamity." Lin Sun glanced at him and said, "I've never seen someone who's courting death like you. When we enter the vast thousand battle domain, you'd better pray that I don't meet you." Fang Xuanzhen was stunned and his face turned gloomy. Such a rude threat was a great provocation to his dignity. "All right, I'll wait." He took a deep breath and his eyes turned cold. 6 hours later, the Tao guiding altar finally brought everyone to the deepest part of the Tao forbidden sky screen. A huge starry sky door appeared in everyone's sight. This door floated in the starry sky, and it was constructed from a myriad of strands of strange and obscure energy of order. It emanated a gorgeous and resplendent glow of the Tao. From afar it looked like a gate to space. This was the gate of the Earthkuan realm, a door that led to the great thousand battles domain. Apart from the Earthkuan realm entrance, there were 7 other similar realm entrances in different universes outside the vast thousand battles domain, and all of them led to the vast thousand battles domain. At this moment, many martial emperors revealed nervous and expectant expressions. Once they entered the gate, it would be the same as stepping onto a path of no return. They would either die or reach the eternal true world. Lin Sun couldn't help sighing with emotion. He remembered the question he had once asked Yuan Qingheng. Could the great thousand battle realms, a place that was isolated from the eternal true world, be wiped out? At that time, Yuan Qingheng felt like he had heard a great joke. Now, Lin Sun could vaguely understand what the other party was thinking. Let alone destroying the great thousand battle domain, even an immortal realm expert would not be able to do so. Let's go. When the Tao altar stopped in front of the Earthkuan realm entrance, Wen Xiaoheng glanced at Lin Sun coldly, then led the group and rushed over. At this moment, Lin Sun acutely noticed that Mi Wuya had shot him a look, and it was filled with a hint of warning and anxiety. It was as if he was telling him not to go to the great thousand battles domain, and not to become enemies with Wen Xiaoheng. Unfortunately, it was just a look, and Lin Sun could not understand anything else. Ling Xuanzi, after you enter this gate, you will arrive at the ancient nightmare battlefield. No matter where you are moved to, no matter where you hide, I will definitely find you. Fang Xuanzhen warned Lin Sun coldly, and was about to leave with the group. Lin Sun took out a jade talisman and said calmly, "There is a wisp of my aura on it. You will be able to find me immediately if you hold this talisman. Do you dare to accept this talisman?" His words were casual and natural, but they contained an invisible domineering aura. Many people were shocked and looked at him. "Good. Very good. Since you are courting death, how can I refuse? Give it to me." Fang Xuanzhen's eyes burst out with a terrifying divine light. He thought that Lin Sun's action was the greatest provocation. Lin Sun casually threw the jade talisman over. Fang Xuanzhen and the group left directly with the jade talisman. "With this jade talisman, no matter where you are, I will be able to find you immediately. Don't lose the jade talisman," Lin Sun murmured in his heart. Lin Sun could not be bothered with Fang Xuanzhen, but the latter's repeated provocations were intolerable to Lin Sun. When Xing Mutian and the group left, he suddenly found Lin Sun and said, "My friend, you are very bold. If you can survive, I don't mind accompanying you." After saying this, he turned around and left. Lin Sun could not help but be stunned. Xing Mutian was extraordinary, and he was a peerless great emperor with the highest cultivation among them. He had been very low-key along the way, as if he was an outsider. Lin Sun did not expect that Xing Mutian would say such words to him before he left. Immediately, Lin Sun shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Then, Mad Confucian Emperor, Jade Star Absolute Emperor and other peerless figures led their people to the gate of Earth Realm and disappeared. When they all left, Ning Daoji sighed and cupped his hands to Lin Sun. "Take care, Taoism peer." After saying that, he also led the experts who had formed an alliance and left. Seeing that only he and Yun Lu of Small Lane Temple were left, Lin Sun did not delay any longer and was about to leave. There are many corpses on this road since ancient times. Those who try to stay together will be tired by their companions. Those who are afraid will be stopped by blood. Only those who are fearless and walk alone can embark on a bloody road. In a quiet and zen voice, Yun Lu looked at Lin Sun and said, "Taoism peer, no matter what they think of you, I have an intuition that you may go further than them on this road." Lin Sun cupped his hands. "Thank you for your auspicious words." After a pause, he said, "I also have an intuition." "I'd like to hear the details," Yun Lu said. "You're right." Lin Sun laughed and turned to the gate of Earth Realm. Yun Lu was stunned for a while until he saw Lin Sun's figure disappear. He couldn't help but smile. The descendants of Fangsuan Mountain are really not ordinary people. Immediately, his expression became calm again. He put on his straw shoes and disappeared into the gate of Earth Realm in a flash. After a long time, the altar of Earth Realm trembled slightly and floated in the air, returning to the direction of the city of Earth Realm. Boom! Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The evil spirit was monstrous. A blood-red figure tore through the sky and pounced on Lin Sun, who had just appeared in this world. It was incredibly fast. Lin Sun almost instinctively punched out without thinking. Boom! This punch caused the void to collapse and crack into countless spiderwebs. But the strange thing was that the blood-red figure avoided it by a hair's breadth. With a gentle flash, it disappeared between heaven and earth, leaving no trace or aura. But Lin Sun still saw its appearance clearly. This was a kind of evil spirit. Its body was formed by a strange blood-red mist. Its face was wriggling and changing, extremely vague, and its aura was ferocious and cruel. It was obvious that this was a strange creature. Rumble, lightning flashed and thunder roared in the sky. Thick lightning flashed in the rolling evil spirit, like a dancing python. This was a world full of evil spirit. There was a vast expanse of blood everywhere, and one could not see the end at a glance. There was no grass on the ground, only many barren sand dunes piled up. The sky was shrouded in rolling thunder and evil spirit, which was extremely frightening. Oppressive. Bloody. Barren. Lin soon spread out his divine sense and immediately noticed that this world was completely filled with all kinds of evil spirit. These evil spirits with bloody, evil, and corrosive strange power were everywhere. Practitioners under the Emperor realm would not be able to bear it at the first moment. They would be invaded by the evil spirit, corroding their flesh and soul. It would not take long for them to turn into a pile of corpses. Fortunately, my cultivation is not suppressed. After a while, Lin Sun finally dared to confirm that he had arrived at the boundless thousand battle domain. Science Sparrow, what do you know about this ancient nightmare battlefield? Lin Sun asked. Science Sparrow turned into a stream of light and flew out from the light green sachet. After looking around, she said in a reserved and proud manner, "There is nothing in this boundless thousand battle domain that I do not know, except for some mysterious forbidden areas and danger zones." As she spoke, Science Sparrow gave Lin Sun some pointers. The ancient nightmare battlefield was a ferocious place at the very edge of the boundless thousand battle domain. This battlefield was made up of 8 regions. Experts who entered the boundless thousand battle domain from the 8 great realm gates would be moved to different places in these 8 regions. Experts like Lin Sun, who entered the ancient nightmare battlefield from the Earthkuan realm gate, would be moved to the Earthkuan domain of the ancient nightmare battlefield. Although it was only a part of the ancient nightmare battlefield, the size of the Earthkuan domain was comparable to a side of the world. The sky here was covered by the blood-fiend Dipper lightning all year round and was filled with a terrifying evil aura. Even an emperor would have to move cautiously here. The reason was that apart from the threat of the blood-fiend Dipper lightning, there were also countless blood spirit nightmare demons hibernating here since ancient times. This was a ferocious being that was terrifying to the extreme. In the countless years of the past, all the experts that perished here would absorb and devour the scattered soul fragments and flesh of their corpses before transforming them into a part of its own strength, causing it to be extremely evil. Just like the word nightmare in their name, these evil creatures were formed from the strange evil aura that filled this world. They came and went without a trace, as untraceable as a dream. Often, when cultivators were relaxed, they would suddenly attack. They were the most treacherous and vicious of all. Only then did Lin soon realize that the blood-red figure he encountered when he first arrived was a blood spirit nightmare demon. P.S. I'll first send 2 consecutive chapters. I'll continue writing after lunch. I'll try to write 2 consecutive chapters before 7 p.m. Chapter 2504. Lin Sun had just thought of this. A blood-red figure suddenly appeared in the void nearby. It dashed towards Lin Sun like a bolt of lightning. Its speed was unbelievably fast. Lin Sun snorted coldly. His body roared and endless Taoist light condensed into a big abyss. The blood-red figure rushed over but was suppressed by the big abyss, like an insect that had crashed into a spider web. It released an ear-splitting shriek. With a hong sound, it turned into a blood-colored fiendish energy and tried to escape. But as Lin Sun operated the big abyss, the roaring blood-red evil chi was destroyed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chi. Before Lin Sun could react, blood-red figures suddenly appeared in the void nearby and charged towards Lin Sun from different directions. Their auras were so fierce and violent that they were comparable to those in the Emperor realm. Faced with such a change, Lin Sun stood still, and the abyss around him suddenly spread to all directions with the momentum of devouring the sky and earth. In a series of dense and dull explosions, the blood-red figures were crushed and destroyed by the terrifying devouring power one after another. To Lin Sun's surprise, nothing was dropped after killing these blood nightmare devils. Science Sparrow, who had been standing on Lin Sun's shoulder, sneered when she saw this. These ferocious creatures with no intelligence are condensed from strange evil chi. They are of no value. It paused for a moment and continued. If you're able to encounter the monarch of the blood soul nightmare, then you can refine it into a strand of baleful origin energy. No matter if it's to temper the body or temper your emperor weapon, It possesses unbelievable effects. Evil Chi? Lin Sun was deep in thought. Yes. You can use this power as a strange grindstone. It is beneficial for cultivation and refining treasures, Cyan Sparrow advised. Lin Sun nodded and asked, "How can I leave this ancient nightmare battlefield and go to the eternal world?" The Azure Sparrow said, "This is just one of the battlefields at the very edge of the Great Thousand Battles regions, which is also the starting point to the eternal true world. There are at least 1,000 battlefields on this path, nearly 100 mysterious forbidden areas, and 49 imperishable passes of various sizes. What you need to think about right now is not how to reach eternal true world, but how to survive on this path." Lin Sun stared blankly for a moment before saying, "Then tell me, how should I kill my way out of this ancient nightmare battlefield?" The Azure Sparrow said without hesitation, "Kill 10 monarch-level blood spirit nightmares and collect their pearls of life, and you'll be able to condense a lightning baleful spirit ring." As it spoke, it looked towards the sky and said, "With the lightning fiend spirit ring, one can resist the blood fiend astral lightning that covers the sky and jump out of this world to arrive at the departed soul domain. Past the undead soul realm." Lin Sun interrupted, "It's not too late to talk about the next route when we arrive at the realm of the dead." As he spoke, Lin Sun took out a jade talisman and sensed it quietly. A moment later, he looked towards the east. Fang Xuanzhen, who was also holding a jade talisman, should be in that direction. "Let's go." Lin Sun took action. Along the way, the sky was filled with surging lightning and surging killing intent, and from time to time, some blood spirit nightmare demons would suddenly appear and launch a sneak attack on Lin. But they were all killed by Lin Sun without hesitation. Although this kind of ferocious creature was extremely difficult to deal with, and it was difficult to sense their hiding place, as long as they showed their traces, they would no longer be a threat to Lin Sun. After a quarter of an hour, in the vast bloody world, Lin Sun suddenly stopped. Almost at the same time, the surface of the ground under his feet suddenly exploded. In the flying dust, a bloody big hand reached out and grabbed at Lin Sun fiercely. The big hand was wrapped in a strange and dazzling bloody killing intent, and it tore the void into pieces. The aura it released was extremely terrifying. Lin Sun's figure flashed, and he narrowly avoided it, moving hundreds of meters away. A bloody figure that was more than 300 meters tall rushed out from the ground, and a myriad of killing intent fell from its body like a waterfall. When it appeared, the blood fiend astral lightning that covered the sky seemed to be attracted and poured down, bathing its figure in violent lightning. All of a sudden, the aura of this 300 meters tall bloody figure rose steadily. Roar! It let out a roar that shook the 9 heavens like a clap of thunder. The sky collapsed, the earth collapsed, and the void became chaotic. Its ferocious power was comparable to a 5th-level Emperor realm existence. Of course, to Lin Sun, this ability was simply not enough. But thinking about it, the ancient nightmare battlefield was only the outermost area of the vast 1,000 battle domains, and there were already such tyrannical ferocious creatures. No one dared to imagine what kind of terrifying dangers they would encounter as they went deeper into the vast 1,000 battle domains. Good sign. This is a sovereign-level blood spirit nightmare demon, and it already has a certain level of intelligence. Green Sparrow stood on Lin Sun's shoulder and said crisply, "To you, this kind of character is naturally not enough. But if you want to collect 10 beads of life, I'm afraid it will take some time. If your luck is bad, I'm afraid you won't be able to collect all of them even after 3 to 5 years." Lin Sun said casually, "If I can't collect them myself, I'll just rob others." Green Sparrow was startled. And at this moment, Lin Sun brazenly attacked. Boom! The great way rumbled, and the sun and moon lost their light. As Lin Sun waved his sleeve, a streak of sword chi broke through the air and fell across the sky. The Nightmare King, which had a certain level of intelligence, clearly sensed the danger. Just as it was about to dodge, it was drowned by the vast ocean-like sword chi. Bang bang bang! Its 100-meter-tall blood-colored figure exploded into pieces, turning into a blood-colored mist that filled the sky. It was completely wiped out by the torrent of sword chi. Swish! Lin Sun moved across the void and stretched out his hand to grab. A pure blood-colored evil source and a fist-sized black bead were grabbed over. The evil source energy was very peculiar. It showed a violent and domineering aura. Lin Sun tried to swallow it into his body. In an instant, it was as if a great sun had exploded in his body. The violent evil chi rushed into his limbs and bones, flesh and blood. It made Lin Sun feel a tingling pain, as if he was being cut by thousands of knives and burned by raging fire. One should know that his life emperor body was already comparable to a miraculous divine weapon. It was incomparably powerful. The power contained in a drop of blood could crush an ordinary emperor realm figure. But at this moment, Lin Sun felt as if he was being torn apart by a tingling pain. After a while, the evil source energy was refined by Lin Sun's physical strength. He calmed down and felt it. Indeed, he found that his physical strength seemed to have been cleansed and tempered. It was a little stronger than before. Even if it was very subtle, the effect was remarkable. Not bad. Lin Sun had realized that, as Cyan Sparrow said, the evil source energy was like a peculiar grindstone. It could be used to refine the body and the treasures. It was not incredible, but it was also a rare treasure in the outside world. Then, Lin Sun took the life bead of the Nightmare King in his hand and looked it up and down. The evil chi of thunder surged in the bead. Vaguely, it produced a wonderful resonance with the blood-colored evil thunder covering the sky. Apart from this, there was nothing special. Lin Sun put away the bead and moved on. On the way, he didn't encounter any Nightmare King at all. On the contrary, those ordinary Nightmare Kings darted out from time to time like flies, which made Lin Sun a little tired of killing them. 2 hours later. Lin Sun suddenly noticed that the response from the Jade Talisman had suddenly disappeared. There was only one possibility. Fang Xuanzhen had destroyed the Jade Talisman that Lin Sun gave him. Could it be that he sensed something was wrong and didn't dare to fight with me at the first moment? Lin Sun frowned. No, this guy is leading a group of Emperor Realm experts. He himself is at the 7th level of Emperor Realm. He hasn't really fought yet, so he shouldn't have retreated so quickly. Could it be that he met with an accident? After thinking for a while, Lin Sun shook his head. There was no way to make a specific deduction on this matter. Next, he continued walking towards the east. Cyan Sparrow was right. Although the earthly territory was only a part of the ancient nightmare battlefield, it was extremely vast. It had been 8 to 10 hours since he entered this place, but he didn't meet anyone along the way. Unable to find Fang Xuanzhen for the time being, Lin Sun focused on finding the sovereign-level blood spirit nightmare. Unfortunately, such a monster was 1 in 1,000. Finding it was no different from trying his luck. But Lin Sun wasn't in a hurry. This was only the first day since he entered the boundless thousand battle domain. Half a day later, desolate sand dunes appeared in the blood-red sky far away. The sky was gloomy, the thunder rumbled continuously, and the surging evil spirit raged, making the place look like a ghost domain. Lin Sun's eyes flashed with a strange light. The surroundings of the sand dunes seemed no different from other places. However, in his eyes, that region was covered in a formless restrictive power. Not a single bit of aura leaked out from that region. If it wasn't for the fact that his attainments in Dao markings had already attained an unprecedented state, he would have almost misjudged it. Quietly, Lin Sun ran the third eye, and the world in the far distance suddenly seemed to change. Layers of abstruse and obscure formations, like layers of a big net, covered the area. With just a glance, Lin Sun could tell that if this formation was activated, its power might not be comparable to Dao Fall and Heaven Kill. But if an Emperor ancestor was accidentally trapped in it, he wouldn't be able to escape in a short time, although he wouldn't die. Who set up such a big formation here? Just when this thought flashed in Lin Sun's mind, he saw a figure suddenly appear in a place far away. When he saw Lin Sun, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Ling Xuanzi." Lin Sun's eyes were like lightning, and he immediately recognized that the figure was an Emperor Realm figure who followed Fang Xuanzhen. However, before Lin Sun could react, the figure turned around and fled in a panic. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows, and then revealed a sneer as he chased after the figure. At the same time, behind the sand dunes, wisps of obscure light and shadow flowed, completely covering the figures and aura of Fang Xuanzhen and the others, as if they were transparent and undetectable. In Fang Xuanzhen's hand, there was a round black bronze mirror, which just reflected the scene of Lin Sun rushing towards here. Chapter 2505. I have to say that Ling Xuanzi's courage is extraordinary. Just as young master had guessed, he really found his way here. An old man laughed. As a peak great emperor, it would be abnormal if Ling Xuanzi didn't have this little bit of courage. Fang Xuanzhen said indifferently. As a peak great emperor, he knew that those who could embark on this path were definitely not ordinary geniuses, but outliers among geniuses. Every one of them had the mentality, will, and strength to look down on their peers. Therefore, when they arrived at the ancient nightmare battlefield, and used the jade talisman to sense Lin Sun's location, Fang Xuanzhen made a decision. Formation. Waiting for the rabbit. Although Fang Xuanzhen was conceited, he knew that even if he joined forces with everyone around him to suppress Lin Sun, a peak 6th heaven great emperor, they were bound to pay a certain price. Fang Xuanzhen didn't want to see such an outcome. In this perilous and unpredictable vast thousand battle domains, only by preserving one's own strength could one live longer. Fang Xuanzhen didn't want to pay an unnecessary price for an opponent like Lin Sun. Thus, setting up a formation and waiting for the rabbit to strike a fatal blow was undoubtedly the safest way. Just like now, the formation covering this heaven and earth was called 9 Nether God Trapping. It was set up by 99 formation flags, and the power of the restriction reached an astonishing 1,000 layers. Emperor Ancestor was trapped in it and couldn't escape at all. Of course, Fang Xuanzhen wasn't a Dao pattern grandmaster. This 9 Nether God Trapping formation was made up of a set of Dao pattern talisman treasures. This formation was also one of Fang Xuanzhen's trump cards. "Young master, he has taken the bait," someone said excitedly. Fang Xuanzhen looked up and saw Lin Sun's figure entering the area covered by the formation. The emperor who had deliberately attracted Lin Sun's attention had returned at this time and said with a complacent expression, "This guy probably thought that I was scared away by him and ran away, didn't he? Haha. Well done." Fang Xuanzhen gave him a look of approval. This person who showed himself to lure Lin Sun was naturally arranged by Fang Xuanzhen. In fact, even Fang Xuanzhen didn't expect that Lin Sun would dare to come alone. However, all this wasn't important now. It's time to reel in the net. Go. Fang Xuanzhen's eyes shone brightly as he took a deep breath and activated the black copper mirror in his hand. Boom. Instantly, the heavens and the earth were overturned. Countless Dao markings and formation diagrams surged into appearance, and they formed layer upon layer of restriction energy that covered the heavens and the earth. Lin Sun, who was in it, was immediately covered by layers of restrictions. Success. Fang Xuanzhen's face lit up with excitement. In his sight, Lin Sun was covered by countless Taoist prohibitions, just like a prisoner who was tied up heavily. "Come, follow me to meet this supreme great emperor from the starry sky ancient road." Fang Xuanzhen took the lead and entered the formation with the bronze mirror in hand. The other monarchs followed closely behind. The great formation rolled and rolled. Countless runes of light and rain circulated. The restrictive power flooded the world like a tide. Not long after, Fang Xuanzhen saw Lin Sun and couldn't help laughing. Ling Xuanzi, I have given you many chances before, but you are stubborn. For a whetstone that even you don't know the use of, you will lose your life. Is it worth it? The other monarchs who followed him all laughed. They regarded Lin Sun as a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, with coldness and contempt. Although Lin Sun was bound and suppressed by layers of restrictions, he didn't seem to panic. Instead, he said indifferently, "No wonder you destroyed the jade token I gave you. It turns out that you have already made sufficient preparations." Fang Xuanzhen raised the corner of his mouth and said, "You and I have both set foot on the peak, so I know best that to deal with people like you, we must win by surprise. Only then can we not lose a single soldier. Of course, if you had some respect in your heart, I'm afraid you wouldn't have encountered this death tribulation. You can only blame yourself for thinking too highly of yourself or being ignorant. After all, you come from the starry sky ancient road. How can you understand what it means to say that there is always someone better than you?" His words were reserved, with a sense of condescension and sarcasm. As he said, he waved his hand. "Go, take off his head. I want to keep it well. After all, it's really not easy to kill a great monarch." Immediately, the group of monarchs rushed out, all with undisguised killing intent, and brazenly attacked. Boom! The light of Tao rose, and the light of treasure whistled. All kinds of Tao methods and monarch weapons were like the water of the Milky Way, rumbling and crushing the void and bombarding Lin Sun alone. Among these monarchs, there were emperor ancestors with high cultivation, and those with low cultivation were at the 5th level of the monarch realm. In addition, they were from the Daheng sword school. Whether it was the Tao methods they controlled or the monarch weapons they used, they were all top-notch. At this time, when they attacked together, their power could make even emperor ancestors despair. Lin Sun suddenly sneered. "Ignorant? Now I'll tell you who is really ignorant." His body stretched out. Boom! An indescribably terrifying divine might burst forth from his body. It was like a landslide or a tsunami, and the layers of restrictive power that trapped him exploded like clouds. Before anyone could react, Lin Sun's figure disappeared strangely. The next moment, puff, 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 a wave of dense and oppressive sounds resounded. Boundless and dazzling sword chi swept through the surroundings, and the group of emperors who charged forward were either slashed into two, beheaded, pierced through in the chest, or directly minced into pieces by the boundless sword chi. Thick scarlet monarch blood splashed, and shrill screams sounded. In the blink of an eye, a bloody scene of slaughter was played out. It was too fast. When Lin Sun escaped, the first thing he did was to kill people. It was like a demon god escaping from hell. Caught off guard, 6 monarchs were killed immediately. Their faces were full of shock and disbelief. If it wasn't for an emperor ancestor who reacted in time and did his best to restrain Lin Sun's slaughter, the casualties would only be more serious. But this emperor ancestor was soon suppressed by Lin Sun's power to the point where he couldn't raise his head. In the distance, Fang Xuanzhen was obviously caught off guard by this scene. Immediately, his face darkened and he shouted, "You're courting death!" He rushed out, his robe fluttering, and his peerless cultivation was released. He was like a sword god, with unparalleled courage and an aura of invincibility. Clang! A Taoist sword swept out from the top of his head. It was crystal white and dazzling like the sun as it slashed towards Lin Sun. This sword was extremely fierce and solemn. It disturbed yin and yang. Before the sword arrived, the sword intent released from it was so strong that it could make ghosts and gods afraid. This was Fang Xuanzhen's power. In the 5th rank Tiandu star field, his title of Sword Emperor Xuanzhen was also shocking. However, Lin Sun's heart was calm in the face of this sword. With a thought in his mind, the profound sword cauldron roared out, steaming with divine brilliance. It moved horizontally in front of him, and blocked the sword with ease. Fang Xuanzhen's pupils shrank, and his heart rose and fell. A peak 6th level emperor ancestor actually blocked his angry sword. This was beyond Fang Xuanzhen's expectation. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun's 5 great Taoist bodies suddenly rushed out and attacked together, bombarding the Emperor Ancestor who had been suppressed by him. Lin Sun alone was already difficult for the Emperor Ancestor. Now, there were 5 great Tao avatars that were not inferior to the original body attacking together. Just that scene alone was enough to make the Emperor Ancestor's scalp explode and his soul leave his body. But it was too late for him to dodge, and he could only use all his strength to resist. Boom! In the blink of an eye, this Emperor Ancestor was killed cleanly. Even if he tried his best, it was useless. His figure and primordial spirit were crushed and dissipated into thin air. How is this possible? Fang Xuanzhen's eyes widened, and he almost went crazy. A 6th-level Emperor Realm cultivator killed an Emperor Ancestor? Even if it was just a 9th-level Emperor Ancestor, and not a true ancestor of a great Tao, how could a 6th-level Emperor Zhu Feng defeat such a terrifying realm? At least, Fang Xuanzhen asked himself honestly. Even a 7th-level Emperor Realm Great Emperor like him could not do this. Everything seemed too abnormal, too horrifying. No matter how calm and wise Fang Xuanzhen was at this moment, he was a little anxious and angry, and his mind felt like it was being attacked. Fang Xuanzhen found it hard to believe that the 9 Netherworlds soul-refining formation, which he had meticulously set up, had suddenly become useless, and the terrifying combat strength displayed by Lin Sun almost overturned his understanding. How could he remain calm? At this moment, Lin Sun's 5 great Tao avatars attacked, killing the remaining Emperor Realm cultivators like cutting melons and vegetables, and Lin Sun's original body rushed towards Fang Xuanzhen. Fang Xuanzhen was indeed Great Emperor Zhu Feng from the Daheng Sword School. After experiencing such a shocking change, his first reaction was not to fight desperately, but to retreat. Swoosh! He turned around and left. He knew that he had very likely made a serious mistake and completely underestimated Lin Sun's ability. In the face of such an unforeseen event, he had to protect himself first to avoid any more accidents. But at this moment, as Lin Sun waved his sleeve, countless Tao lights condensed into Tao patterns and disappeared into the 9 Nether God Trapping formation. Immediately after, the formation seemed to be boiling, rolling and surging, producing a shocking change. Oh no! Fang Xuanzhen's face suddenly changed, and he realized that the black mirror in his hand had lost control of the formation, and layers of restriction power were covering him. How is this possible? His eyes were as round as saucers. This unforeseen event almost caused his mind to fall into chaos. Boom! In the distance, Lin Sun had already rushed over. A Tao sword swept out from the profound sword cauldron, filled with monstrous Tao light, and slashed at Fang Xuanzhen. At this critical moment, Fang Xuanzhen suddenly opened his mouth and spat. A golden decree emerged, shooting out the power of order. In the earth-shaking roar, it blocked Lin Sun's sword. Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised, and realized that this golden decree was an extraordinary treasure, full of the aura of order. Buzz! The golden decree turned into a golden light, wrapping Fang Xuanzhen's figure, completely fearless of the restriction power, and was about to escape from this formation. Lin Sun's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he didn't hesitate to use his trump card. This time, he couldn't allow Fang Xuanzhen to leave alive. P.S. 3rd and 4th updates. 5th update, around 10 p.m. Do you have the heart to not vote when you have the monthly votes? Chapter 2506. Fang Xuanzhen made up his mind. The Golden Decree was his life-saving measure, and also the reason why he dared to come to the vast thousand battles domain. Ling Xuanzi, Fang Xuanzhen, will remember this. He gritted his teeth, and his eyes were filled with hatred. A meticulously prepared ambush had instead caused him to suffer heavy losses and even fall into a crisis. This was something he had never experienced before. Suddenly, Fang Xuanzhen was stunned. He felt as if a white light had flashed in front of him, causing him to pause for a moment. Before he could come back to his senses, boom! An ancient cauldron descended from the sky, suppressing him and the power of the golden decree into the cauldron. This cauldron was none other than the abyssal sword cauldron. Lin Sun had relied on the forbidden passing divine power to fight for a chance to stop Fang Xuanzhen, and finally suppressed him with the abyssal sword cauldron. No! Fang Xuanzhen was shocked inside the sword cauldron. He screamed and struggled with all his might. The golden decree around him released a dazzling divine radiance, and strands of order energy interweaved as he tried to break free from the abyssal sword cauldron. Tut! As Lin Sun operated the abyssal sword cauldron, the order phoenix flame and the nirvana flame that had turned into a lotus appeared. The former was sparkling and magnificent, glowing purple. The latter was like a blooming lotus, shining with a green halo. The appearance of the two order energy produced an unfathomable aura and pressure. The order energy released by the golden decree immediately collapsed and dimmed. In the end, the golden decree was completely suppressed. Fang Xuanzhen's soul almost came out of his body, and he was terrified. This was only his first day in the vast thousand battles domain. Was he going to be in trouble? Bang! Fang Xuanzhen's vision turned dark as a terrifying force pressed down on him. He fainted immediately. Lin Sun kept the abyssal sword cauldron and heaved a sigh of relief. If Fang Xuanzhen was allowed to escape, then it was extremely likely that he would go into hiding. At that time, it would be extremely difficult to capture him again. This was also the reason why Lin Sun did not hesitate to use the forbidden passing divine power. Now that Fang Xuanzhen had been suppressed, he could easily pry open Fang Xuanzhen's mouth and learn about the secrets of the sharpening heart whetstone. From afar, the 5 Tao bodies whizzed over. The Emperor Realm cultivators that followed Fang Xuanzhen had been completely killed. Even the spoils of war were packed properly. Lin Sun put away the 5 Taoist bodies and waved his sleeves. Crash! The 9 secluded god-trapping formation covering heaven and earth was suddenly removed and turned into 99 formation flags, which were caught by Lin Sun. Although this formation isn't as powerful as the Death Dao formation, it still has its own wonders when used to trap a monarch. Lin Sun looked at it for a while and put it away. The black copper mirror in Fang Xuanzhen's hand was the formation plate of the 9 Serenities god-trapping formation. As Fang Xuanzhen was suppressed, the formation plate naturally fell into Lin Sun's hands. Between heaven and earth, the color of blood was boundless, the surging baleful aura and thunder surged under the sky. Lin Sun looked around and was about to leave. Suddenly, his eyes were like lightning as he looked into the distance and said, "Have you seen enough? Fellow Taoist Ling Xuanzi's methods are capable of overturning the heavens and earth, and it has truly broadened our horizons." An emotional voice sounded. There was a fluctuation in the void, and the figures of the reckless scholar emperor and the others appeared. Mad scholarly emperor came from the scholarly world. He wore a scholarly robe and a wide belt. Frost had a green scroll hanging from his waist, and his whole body was emitting a noble aura. The imperial emperors by his side had solemn expressions, and they seemed like a group of teachers. Their bearing was unlike the other cultivators. "So it's you." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. He had heard that the cultivators of the real literati world all followed the path of Confucianism. They cultivated the noble spirit, shouldered the sun and moon on their shoulders, and had a deep and profound mind. Compared to Buddhism, they each had their own merit. Fellow Taoist, you don't have to worry too much. We just happen to be here by coincidence. We absolutely don't have any ill intentions. The mad scholar emperor's words were clear like drums, and it seemed as if he was reciting the profundities of a scripture. His graceful bearing was dazzling, and it caused others to find it extremely difficult to arouse the heart to resist him. "Really?" Lin Sun nodded. "If that's the case, I'll go first. Goodbye." With that, he turned around and left. Mad Confucian Emperor was stunned. It seemed that he didn't expect that Lin Sun would leave so quickly, as if he was afraid of getting involved with him. He seems to be restrained, but he's really proud and aloof to the extreme. There's no need for Dean to pay attention to him. A snow-white-haired old man frowned and spoke with displeasure. He just experienced a calamity and noticed our tracks, so it's inevitable for him to be vigilant. This is human nature. Mad Scholar Emperor looked at the direction Lin Sun left towards and smiled indifferently, but even I never imagined that Fang Xuanzhen's group from the Eternal Sword House would actually be wiped out by him. When this matter was mentioned, everyone in the surroundings revealed heavy expressions. Earlier, they were hiding in the shadows and had a panoramic view of what Fang Xuanzhen's group had set up, and they originally thought that Ling Xuanzi from the Starry Ancient Path would definitely suffer calamity. Who would have imagined that Ling Xuanzi, who was all alone, would be the one to survive in the end? All of this strongly proved that Ling Xuanzi was absolutely not as simple as a peak 6th level Imperial Emperor. What a pity! I originally intended to invite him to go with me, but now it would seem like it's impossible for him to form a group with anyone. Mad Scholar Emperor sighed, and then he waved his hand and said, "Let's go as well. Let's strive to gather 10 sovereign rank Blood Soul Nightmare Devil's Origin Pearls as soon as possible and leave this place." In the depths of a barren land, Lin Sun opened up an underground cavern here, and after setting up an ore-isolating formation, he took out the abyssal sword cauldron. Until Lin Sun took out the golden decree. Cyan Sparrow spoke. The material of this decree shows immortal characteristics, and the order energy it contains should be at the 5th level of the earth rank. It can only be considered ordinary. However, if it were in the vast thousand world, such an order talisman would be considered a priceless treasure. It's enough to resist the attack of an emperor ancestor. Unfortunately, that kid surnamed Fang is too stupid. He doesn't even know that the order energy nurtured in your imperial life treasure is even more powerful. Lin Sun sized up the treasure that Cyan Sparrow called the order talisman, and couldn't help but feel a little regretful. The power of this treasure had been exhausted, and it could no longer be used. However, the material of this decree was quite mystical. It contained immortal characteristics and was even more precious and rare than emperor-rank divine materials. Cyan Sparrow suddenly stretched out her beak and ate the order talisman. As she ate, she let out a satisfied and comfortable voice. "In the future, if you encounter such things filled with immortal substances, you can let me eat them. I promise that I will try my best to guide you to a path of survival in the vast thousand battle domains. I can't guarantee that you can reach the eternal world, but at least I won't let you die so easily." Lin Sun couldn't help but ask, "What if I don't agree?" Cyan Sparrow snorted coldly, "Aren't you worried that I'll be unhappy and guide you to a path of no return?" Lin Sun was speechless. He started to search Fang Xuanzhen's body for treasures. It had to be said that as a top great emperor who came from the Eternal Sword House, and as the son of an immortal, the treasures Fang Xuanzhen carried were dazzling. Most of them were the Eternity Origin crystals. There were more than 10,000 of them, and they were all first grade. Their value was astonishing. Apart from that, there were dozens of divine medicines for cultivation, nearly 100 divine materials that could be considered treasures, and 4 or 5 emperor treasures with unfathomable power. There were Taoist seals, fishing drums, horsetail whisks, spirit bracelets. What caught Lin Sun's attention the most was an emperor's sword. It was 2 feet long, as white as snow, and its sword will was like the sky. It gave people a feeling that it would not move for a long time, and its quality was astonishing. It was at least at the upper level of spirit grade. The sword was carved with 2 strange inscriptions, Imperial Everlasting. The sword hilt contained immortal qualities, and the blade had obviously been refined by the power of order. Although it didn't have the power of order, it had the charm of order. Why doesn't this sword contain an artifact spirit? Lin Sun frowned. Cyan Sparrow said, "The grades of emperor weapons are not divided according to the strength of the artifact spirit. Emperor weapons that have given birth to artifact spirits need to be taught from the most basic real martial realm to cultivate. They need to spend a lot of effort and pay a price. Moreover, the artifact spirit might not be able to metamorphose into the Emperor realm. You ought to be clearly aware of how difficult and dangerous the path of cultivation is, whereas, to an artifact spirit, the tribulation they face every single time they break through is usually even more dangerous than a cultivator. Since the ancient times until now, there have been many artifact spirits that perished beneath the tribulation of breaking through. Even if artifact spirits reach the Emperor realm, they will have complete wisdom, state of mind, and cultivation by then. If the way they pursue conflicts with their masters, it will be bad. Lin Sun also knew what Cyan Sparrow said. But the next words were something Lin Sun hadn't thought about before. Cyan Sparrow said, "Because of this, most people will not choose to cultivate artifact spirits when refining life weapons. Just like the Emperor's sword you see now, it can be regarded as the top level of Emperor weapons, but it doesn't have a sword spirit." Lin Sun nodded. He understood this, but he didn't seriously consider whether his abyssal sword cauldron needed a artifact spirit. After a while, Lin Sun shook his head and stopped thinking about it. At least for now, it didn't matter whether abyssal sword cauldron had a artifact spirit or not. He put away the imperial sword and other treasures and decided to interrogate Fang Xuanzhen about sharpening heart. But to Lin Sun's surprise, Fang Xuanzhen fell into a strange state as if he was dead. Only his body still retained vitality, but his spirit was sealed by a layer of strange power. This guy is really ruthless. He cast the seal of God on himself. Cyan Sparrow saw through it at a glance and sneered. This secret method has been passed down in eternal truth for a long time. In order to protect their clansmen, some immortal emperor clans set the power of the seal of God in their spirit. Once they encounter an accident, as long as the seal of God is activated, their spirit will not be restrained. Even the emperor ancestor can do nothing about it. The green sparrow paused for a moment and continued. Obviously, the God-bind seal in this kid's soul core was left behind by his father, and it's suffused with an eternal energy. This also means that even if you kill him now, his soul core will be unable to be obliterated unless you're able to deal with the energy of the God-bind seal. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Then do you know how to crack it? P.S. The 5th update is here. The Lantern Festival broke out smoothly. Those of you who will vote after 5 a.m., you can start your performance now. /1_. Chapter 2507. Cyan Sparrow said, "The God restriction seal that seals his spirit is made by an immortal figure, which means that you should at least have the power of the immortal level to break it." Lin Sun was stunned. Is there no other way? Of course there is. Cyan Sparrow pointed out, your life weapon is covered with 2 kinds of power of order. One is filled with the aura of the immortal phoenix. Although it's only a part of the power, it can be classified as the 6th level of the earth rank. The other kind of power of order, well, speaking up to this point, Cyan Sparrow was a little hesitant and said vaguely, "This order power isn't complete, but its aura is extremely special. Looking at its power, it's almost on par with the order power of Earth rank 9. However, its aura is extremely obscure, which makes it difficult for me to determine its specific rank." Lin Sun was clear about it after hearing this. Even if the part of the phoenix flame in the abyssal sword cauldron was incomplete, it was still comparable to the 6th level of the earth rank. The power of order of nirvana of freedom heaven was amazing, and its power was comparable to the 9th level of the earth rank. And its aura was even stronger than the 9th level of the earth rank. But no matter what, you only need to use one of these 2 kinds of power of order to crush this person's God restriction seal. Cyan Sparrow said, "But at that time, this person's spirit will also be crushed." Suddenly, Lin Sun hesitated. After a while, he took out the whetstone inscribed with the words, "Sharpen one's heart," and asked Cyan Sparrow, "Do you recognize this thing?" Cyan Sparrow stared at it for a while, with a pair of smart eyes showing a shocked expression. Finally, she shook her head. I can only see that this stone is not simple, but I can't see what kind of magic it has. Cyan Sparrow came from the Yuan family of the immortal emperor and was extremely proud. Even she was shocked, which undoubtedly proved the mystery of this whetstone. Lin Sun, who was a little disappointed, was about to put away the whetstone. Suddenly, he keenly noticed that a wisp of strange aura quietly emerged from Fang Xuanzhen's body and sensed the existence of the whetstone. Buzz, at the same time, the whetstone in Lin Sun's hand trembled imperceptibly. Lin Sun's eyes lit up, and his divine sense spread into Fang Xuanzhen's body. This guy fell into a state of suspended animation. The power of his body was silent, and Lin Sun's spiritual awareness easily swept into it. After a while, Lin Sun finally found the source of the strange breath. A white stone was being nurtured in Fang Xuanzhen's imperial world. It was the size of a palm, flat and jade white. It was like the warmest and translucent divine jade in the world, and it was suffused with a gentle glow that calmed the mind. Without hesitation, Lin Sun took out the white stone. When he held it in his hand, it felt cool to the touch, soft and comfortable. Merely looking at it caused one's mind and soul to feel tranquil, as if they'd been cleansed. On the back of the stone there were 4 words inscribed, nurturing the heart like jade. Every single word he spoke was elegant like a cool breeze, and it carried a feeling of great freedom, a feeling of being completely free and unfettered. Sharpen the heart like a blade, nurture the heart like jade. The green sparrow muttered. It was as if it was infatuated, as if there was a true meaning behind this, and it wanted to distinguish it, but it had already forgotten how to speak. At the same time, Lin Sun was also overwhelmed with emotions. Sharpening the heart like a blade, his words like sword scars, incomparably sharp and unbridled. Nurturing the heart like jade, writing like a cool breeze, gentle and elegant, free and unfettered. These 2 black and white stones, one sharpened the sword while the other nurtured the heart, and they echoed with each other to form a heart-trembling charm. In a trance, a loud laughter seemed to resound. 3 cups to reach the great way, a single cup to reach nature, a drunken dream, and a reincarnation to restore the era. The voice seemed to be magical, and it dragged Lin Sun's mind into a strange state. It was as if he was in the mighty river of fate, where time rose and fell, reincarnation changed, and waves rose and the world flowed. Suddenly, a sigh resounded on the mighty river of fate, and it revealed loneliness and disappointment. Seeking the way with the sword, striving to cross the reincarnation, walking in the changing of the era, searching, yet unable to find the reason, having no opponent in the world is too lonely in the end. Could it be that only death is the ultimate transcendence? Tao can be Tao, but it's not a Tao. The heavenly Tao is human, the great Tao is small. In the end, I'm trapped in the Tao, ha ha ha, what bullshit great way. It's all nonsense. Every word was like a thunderclap, rumbling and making Lin Sun's mind tremble and his head swell with a stinging pain. Just when he felt that he was about to be unable to bear it, the voice suddenly became low and calm, as if it was completely relieved and put down. Well, if this road doesn't work, I can only go through Nirvana again and find another way. When listening to this, a picture quietly emerged in Lin Sun's mind. In the eternal silence of the great ruins, a figure turned around and walked into the vast nothingness. His whole body fell apart and turned into countless light rain that scattered and dissipated. Only the eternally silent great ruins was left, desolate since ancient times. Vaguely, Lin Sun saw that there seemed to be a door slowly closing in the depths of the great ruins, and a sword cry came out from the deeper part of the door, like a whine. Boom! Hearing the sword cry, Lin Sun only felt that his head almost exploded. Countless complex and obscure forces hit his mind, making him tremble all over, and his state of mind showed signs of collapse. For a long time, Lin Sun felt dizzy in his mind, and everything he saw and felt before disappeared. Only an ethereal whine lingered in the deepest part of his heart. "My lord, I must break the shackles, free myself from the ruins of wonders, and go to find you." That mournful wail was filled with sorrow and determination. When Lin Sun wanted to feel it carefully, even the whine disappeared without a trace. It seemed that everything he had experienced just now was like an unreal dream. After a long time, Lin Sun took a deep breath and gradually calmed down, and then his eyes fell on the two mysterious stones in his hand. The scenes he had seen just now must be the traces of willpower left on these two stones. The figure that turned around and walked into the nothingness must be the owner of the sword whetstone and the heart-nourishing stone. He was a sword Tao giant who fought for reincarnation and walked through many eras. It was too lonely to have an opponent in the world. The meaning revealed by these words undoubtedly proved that in terms of the Tao of the sword, this legendary giant had already reached an unprecedented level. But in the end, this legendary giant chose to reincarnate and start anew. He wanted to open up another path and walk on the path of Tao again. The reason was that he admitted that he couldn't find a way to break through and transcend again. Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked by this, and he was unable to imagine to what extent this legendary giant had reached on the path of Tao to make such a choice. The only thing he could be sure of was that this person had reborn in the ruins of wonders and vanished from the world. On the other hand, he'd probably sealed his sword within the ruins of profundity before he left. So, the sword seemed as if it possessed a spirit of its own after he left, and it emanated a strand of a wail that carried a dense aura of sorrow. The ruins of wonders of ways, the sword Tao giant, the sword wails. Lin Sun fell into deep thought. The Kunlun ruins of ways, the ultimate ruins, the ruins of creation of ways, and the ruins of wonders of ways were distributed on the ancient paths in the starry sky at the beginning. Later on, the Kunlun ruins and the ultimate ruins suffered calamities respectively, and their origins dried up, whereas the whereabouts of the ruins of creation and ruins of wonders were unknown. Especially the ruins of wonders, it was the most mysterious and unknown. Since the ancient times until now, many great figures had even thought that if they wanted to find the ruins of wonders, then they could only cross the starry sky and head to the other side in order to find clues. On the other hand, the ruins of wonders in Lin Sun's possession had some sort of karma with the ruins of wonders of ways. Now, after experiencing the unbelievable scenes from before, Lin Sun realized that the owner of the sword whetstone and heart-nurturing jade in his possession had once entered the ruins of wonders of ways. Unfortunately, Lin Sun didn't know who this person was, nor did he know his origins, so he was unable to deduce too much. "You seem to have noticed something just now?" Qin Ke suddenly asked. Lin Sun nodded, and then he thought of something and said, "Yes, the owner of these two treasures had once entered the ruins of wonders of ways, and his attainments in the sword Tao had attained an unprecedented and invincible state." After hearing this, Qin Ke said in a daze, "How could I not know when such a great figure in the sword Tao had appeared in these countless years?" "Then do you know about the ruins of wonders of ways?" Lin Sun asked. Qin Ke said without hesitation, "Of course I do. A long time ago, countless forces in the eternal world were searching for the ruins of wonders of ways. They believed that the complete mystery of reincarnation existed in the ruins of ways, and it was enough to allow cultivators to be invincible in the changing of eras. However, no one had ever been able to find the ruins of wonders of ways, so very few people in the eternal world talked about this matter." Lin Sun said in surprise, "The complete mystery of reincarnation?" He suddenly remembered that there was a world-like reincarnation in his nirvana order. In the past, he had entered the reincarnation cycle and rebuilt his cultivation. This is just an inference and speculation. No one knows what is hidden in the ruins of wonders of ways. Qin Ke shook her head and said. Lin Sun nodded. After a while, he put away the sword whetstone and heart-nurturing jade, and then he looked at Fang Xuanzhen, who was in a state of suspended animation. "Will he be able to wake up by himself?" Lin Sun asked. Qin Ke said, of course he can. However, it will be at least 100 years later. This is also the price to pay for using the God-forbidding seal. No one can be spared. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. He knew that he would not be able to get more clues about the owner of the sword whetstone from Fang Xuanzhen in a short period of time. After thinking about it, Lin Sun suppressed Fang Xuanzhen in the Tower of Infinity. It was just 100 years and he could afford to wait. Next, Lin Sun began to meditate with his legs crossed. A day later, Lin Sun walked out of the underground cave. His figure flickered and shifted in the blood-red world, searching for the sovereign-level blood spirit demon. When he killed Fang Xuanzhen and his group, there was a sovereign-level blood spirit demon's pearl of life among the spoils of war. In other words, Lin Sun already had 2 pearls of life. He only needed to find 8 more to condense the Thunder Fiend spirit ring. With this treasure, he could pass through the blood fiend hard thunder that covered the sky, walk out of the ancient nightmare battlefield, and arrive at the next battlefield, the realm of the dead. At the same time, there were many figures searching for the sovereign-level blood spirit demon in different areas of the ancient nightmare battlefield. Everyone knew that it was related to whether they could walk out of the ancient nightmare battlefield. Chapter 2508. Die. A loud roar resounded in the barren land as a huge golden hand slammed down. A sovereign king blood spirit nightmare demon was directly smashed into pieces. Xing Mutian waved his sleeves and kept the malevolent source and his natal jewel. He wore a purple robe and a jade belt. His long hair was loose and his eyes shone with an obscure golden light. His entire body gave off a domineering aura. It's only the 4th pearl of life. It's too slow. Mutian muttered. If I don't enter the Spectre Soul domain as soon as possible, I won't be able to collect the Emperor ancestral roots. Spectre Soul domain, a dark and desolate Tao mausoleum. Rumor had it that there were fragments of the great Tao ancestral roots from the last era buried there. If one could refine them, they would be able to greatly improve their cultivation. However, there was a limited number of Grand Tao ancestral roots, and it was especially so for some Grand Tao ancestral roots of superb quality. They would only be able to enter the Spectre Soul domain for a month. This meant that the longer they stayed in the ancient nightmare battle domain, the more likely they would be left behind. By then, even if they entered the Spectre Soul domain, the Emperor ancestral roots would have already been snatched away. I have to hurry. Mutian's eyes flashed coldly. His cultivation had already reached the 8th level of the Juyu Emperor realm. He planned to achieve a breakthrough in the vast thousand battle domain. If he could reach the 9th level of the Juyu Emperor realm, no matter how dangerous the vast thousand battle domain was, he had nothing to fear. In another direction, Juju Emperor led a group of people to move quickly. She wore black armor, a black spear, and a black veil. Her entire body was shrouded in black mist. When she moved, a murderous aura swept through the area. Quick, gather the Pearl of Life. We have to leave the ancient nightmare battlefield in 3 days no matter what. Her voice was as cold as ice as she urged. The emperors following her didn't dare to delay. Apart from Mutian's group and the Ju Star Summit's group, Mad Scholar Emperor, Ning Daoji, and the other forces were also doing their best to gather the Pearl of Life. To them, the outermost part of the ancient nightmare battlefield posed no threat at all. There was no reason for them to stay. On the other hand, the Spectre Soul region possessed the Grand Tao ancestral route that tempted them. The ancient nightmare battlefield was divided into 8 parts. The area that Lin Sun and the others had entered through the Earthkuan Realm Gate was called the Earthkuan Dominion. It was just a part of the ancient nightmare battlefield. There were experts from various universes in the other 7 territories as well, and they were moving about in the territories they'd entered. Their goal was the same: to kill the monarch rank blood spirit nightmare devil and obtain their power jewels. Moreover, there was no lack of dazzling martial monarchs in the 7 great territories. Some of them were even stronger than Xing Mutian, reckless martial monarch, and Ning Daoji. Everyone was clearly aware of all of this, and they were clearly aware that after they arrived at the Spectre region, the cultivators that had entered from the 8 spatial gates were bound to erupt into a bloody conflict for the sake of fighting for the Grand Dao ancestral root. Only the experts who reached the Spectre Soul region first would be able to seize the initiative. What destiny pearl? I don't need it at all. I just want Ling Xuanzi to die. In the blood-red world, when Xiaoheng's expression was filled with indifferent killing intent. After he'd led all the martial emperors into the ancient nightmare battlefield, he'd started searching at the first possible moment. His objective wasn't to collect the power jewels, but to kill Lin Sun. But up until now, he hadn't encountered Lin Sun, and this caused Wen Xiaoheng to be unable to help but feel slightly gloomy. Young master, the ancient nightmare battlefield is extremely vast. If we continue searching like this, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult to drag him out. The senile old woman spoke with a ghastly expression. In my opinion, why don't we head to the Spectre region right away? That place is only the size of a minor world, so it'll undoubtedly be much easier to search for him once he appears. But what if he doesn't appear? When Xiaoheng frowned. Then it proves that he either perished in the ancient nightmare battlefield, or he's afraid and is intentionally avoiding us. No matter which outcome it is, it's beneficial to us, said the old woman. Not to mention we have another objective this time, and it's utterly not worth wasting our time and energy on such a person. When Xiaoheng remained silent for a moment before he waved his hand and said, "All right, we'll do as you say." The old woman immediately smiled. Mi Wuya and Yen Yuro, who'd been following Wen Xiaoheng all this while, exchanged glances, and their hearts couldn't help but feel heavy. Of course they knew that Ling Xuanzi was Lin Sun, but no matter what his identity was, it would probably bode ill if Wen Xiaoheng discovered him. No one knew better than them how terrifying the eternal Imperial Sword Emperor from the immortal Emperor clans Wen family was. I can only hope that Lin Sun doesn't run into Wen Xiaoheng. The two of them had the same thought at the same time. Lin Sun didn't hide from the beginning until the end, because he didn't know that Wen Xiaoheng and the others had been searching for him with all their might. It could only be said that the ancient nightmare battlefield was too vast, and Lin Sun had never encountered Wen Xiaoheng and the others. The search continued. After a full day, Lin Sun had only managed to collect 4 power jewels. Even Lin Sun felt that it was rather boring. On the way, Lin Sun couldn't help but ask, "How is Cyan Sparrow's departed soul realm compared to the ancient nightmare battlefield? For you, it naturally isn't that dangerous. However, it's rumored that the ancestral root of the Great Path from the previous era is buried in that world. It's a fortuitous encounter that all emperors dream of. Refining it can greatly increase one's cultivation base," Cyan Sparrow said. "But there are too many monks and not enough meat. For the sake of fighting for the ancestral root of the Great Path over the countless years, all the experts who entered the departed soul realm would frequently have bloody conflicts." Lin Sun couldn't help but ask, "The ancestral root of the Great Path from the previous era?" "That's right. The previous era is also known as the Immortal Martial Era. That's an extremely ancient matter. Even I can't say for sure how many years have passed since the previous era. But what we can be sure of is that it's precisely because of the destruction of the Immortal Martial Era that the current era has flourished." "Oh, that's right. According to the Eternal True World's era calendar, the era we're in is known as the Spirit Martial Era. It has existed for more than 9 million years. Spirit Martial Era. 9 million years. Lin Sun was slightly shocked. He made some calculations. 100,000 years ago was the ancient era of the Galaxy Ancient Path, and 200,000 years ago was the immemorial era of the Galaxy Ancient Path. 300,000 years ago was the ancient era of the Galaxy Ancient Path. Based on this deduction, compared to the time that the eternal true world had existed for, the amount of time that the ancient path of the Galaxy Ancient Path had experienced since ancient times was clearly much shorter. And before the spirit martial era, there was still the immortal martial era. This span of time caused Lin Sun's mind to be in a daze. He could not help but remember the loud laughter of the whetstone's owner. Seeking the way of the sword, fighting to cross the cycle of reincarnation, walking in the changing of eras, searching, Lin Sun suddenly felt his body stiffen. Walking in the changing of eras. Could it be that the whetstone's owner wasn't from this era? It's rumored that when you can see the profound truth of eternity and understand the laws of destiny, you will be able to stand above all Tao and look at the changes of the world. You will be able to see the mysteries of the flow of time and understand the secrets behind the rise and fall of eras. It's a pity that although the eternal true world is called eternal, only the legendary eternal gods can see the profound truth of eternity. Lin Sun was startled and was about to say something. Whoosh, in the void nearby, there was a tumble and two figures emerged, one in front and one behind, sandwiching Lin Sun in the middle. They were separated by only 10,000 feet. One of them looked like a young man in the prime of his life. He wore a feather robe and had a handsome and aloof face. He held a snow-white horsetail whisk in his hand. The other had white hair and skin that was as smooth as a baby's. He had kind eyes and a sage-like demeanor. Both of them exuded the aura of the ancestor realm. As soon as they appeared, the power released from their bodies shrouded the world, causing the air to stagnate and the void to become chaotic. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and said, "What are you two doing?" These two people looked unfamiliar. They were obviously not the group of emperors who had entered the gate of the Earth-Kuan realm like him. This made Lin Sun immediately conclude that these two people should have come to the ancient nightmare battlefield from another realm gate. A peak 6th level Emperor realm Great Emperor. Impressive. The white-haired elder with a kind face praised with a smile. The handsome young man in the feather robe had a cold expression and said bluntly, "It's not easy to cultivate. It's even harder to live longer in the boundless thousand battle domain. We don't want to take your life. As long as you hand over the pearl of life, we will leave immediately." So it's a robbery. Lin Sun suddenly understood. The young man in the feather robe and the white-haired elder were stunned. Lin Sun's relaxed reaction was obviously a little abnormal. This made them suspect that this peak 6th level Emperor realm young man might have something to rely on. The white-haired old man's expression was warm as he said, "Young friend, you can slowly collect the heavenly jewels, but if you lose your life, then there's no possibility of revival. The two of us don't want to see a young man like you be buried here just because of some heavenly jewels." So, before he finished speaking, Lin Sun had already let out a long laugh. "Stop talking nonsense. You're being so pretentious when you're robbing others. Come, let's see who's robbing who today." Boom. He took the lead and rushed towards the young man in the feather robe. The abyssal sword cauldron swept out, wrapped in billions of rays of light, rumbling and crushing the void. "You're courting death." The young man in the feather robe's cold eyes were like a sword. With a series of clanging sounds, a dazzling flying knife tore the sky and slashed out. On the flying knife, the ancestor realm aura was earth-shattering like a landslide and a tsunami. Clang! The abyssal sword cauldron was blocked and collided with the flying knife, causing the ground to suddenly collapse and smoke and dust to fill the air. The young man in the feather robe couldn't help but be a little surprised that he couldn't repel Lin Sun's sword cauldron. But the next moment, his expression changed. Lin Sun's figure flashed and the 5 great Tao bodies suddenly rushed out, like a god descending to the world, and violently attacked the young man in the feather robe with lightning speed. P.S. Don't panic, there will be more updates at the end of the month.